Good morning. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Joint Standing Committee on Labor and Housing. My name is Craig Hickman. I represent Senate District 14, 11 towns in Southern Kennebec County. Today we have two public hearings, and this afternoon we will have a dozen work sessions or so. And so before we begin our agenda for the day, we will begin with committee introductions. Today we'll begin with Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I am Representative Dick Bradstreet, and I represent House District 80. That's made up of my hometown of Vassalboro, Windsor, Somerville, and part of Augusta.
Representative Gear.
Good morning. I'm Tracy Gear. I represent House District 9, which is Kennebunkport and Coastal Biddeford and Kennebunk.
Representative Drinkwater.
Greetings from Milford, District 121, Representative Gary Drinkwater.
And Representative Pebworth.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Pebworth. I reside in Blue Hill, part of the House District 133.
Senator Mearmont. You're on mute, sir. Senator Mearmont, you're on mute. Senator Garrett, we'll go to you first. Senator Garrett, are you with us? Representative Rader. Okay.
Tracy Garrett, representing Senate District 10.
Thank you. Representative Rader.
Hi, my name is Amy Rader. I represent District 125, which is a portion of Bangor.
Representative Prescott.
I'm Dwayne Prescott, House District 17, Waterboro and Lyman.
Senator Mearmont, would you like to try again?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Dave Mearmont, Senate District 12, Knox County, with the county seat of Rockland.
Representative Warren, are you with us?
Good morning. I'm Representative Sophie Warren, representing my hometown here in Scarborough Coastal District 29.
And Chairman Sylvester.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Representative Mike Sylvester. I represent District 39, which is the Eastern Peninsula portion of Portland and the Fighting Islands of Casco Bay. This morning, I will be timing for folks who are testifying. And so what you want to be able to do is put it in gallery mode so that you can see all the bright smiling faces of the committee and those folks waiting to testify. And I will hold up my phone at the time that we begin. You have a 3-minute period to testify for the public. Sponsors and co-sponsors are not on the clock. And when you hit the end of your 3 minutes, I will gently hold up my phone for the last 30 seconds and then nudge you at the end of it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We also have with us our awesome committee clerk, Alyssa Thompson, and our awesome analyst, Stephen Langland from OPLA. I may have to leave in the middle of this public hearing to go to another committee as well. And when that happens, I will turn the gavel over to Chairman Sylvester. Today, we will be taking public testimony. We urge everyone to keep their remarks to the committee to 3 minutes or less. As Chairman Sylvester has said, please do not use the chat function for anything other than technical issues. And you will be promoted to the panel through a wormhole. Hang in there, you'll arrive. And I think most of the people that I see on the sign-up sheet have done this before. So hopefully we won't expect any problems and it'll be a great day. So with that, I will open up the public hearing on LD 1644, an act to improve the disability retirement program of the Maine Public Employees Retirement System, presented by Senator, our own David Mearmont of Knox. The floor is yours, Senator. You are on mute again, sir.
Oh,
just don't want to be heard today, do you?
What a day. This is going to be a fun Monday. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Hickman, Representative Sylvester, my colleagues on labor and housing. I'm here to present LD 1644, and I've already introduced myself, so I'll skip that part. This is the bill that the committee heard last session, for those of you who were here. It addressed the problems regarding long-term disability with the Maine Public Employees Retirement System, and that failed to be taken up by the entire legislature due to the COVID-19 shutdown. The hearing packed the committee room and allowed a forum for the horrible treatment that many of our state workers had faced when they became sick or disabled. It revealed a broken system of catch-22 medical review and appeals that almost guaranteed denial of the safety net that these folks expected. Although being required that Maine public employees use the system when it comes to long-term disability, there are minimal benefits. It is unfortunate that many, oh yes, that more workers don't know this and that they had it, and if they did, they'd like a choice of plans when they're hired. Many people have substantial payments to the Social Security system prior to working for the state of Maine, and when they retire, they lose a part of their money that they paid in because of the windfall elimination provision of the tax code as it applies to separate plans. We've dealt with that several times, but have yet to fix it. Since the last time we heard this bill, some changes have been made, which we'll hear about today from MEPers. For some of the worst cases that needed to be addressed, the director became involved with the big picture that was missing from the application and appeals process. This is the bill as originally drafted. It will be up to us as a committee to decide what still needs to be moved forward after hearing what has not been done. And also, you'll need to listen closely about whether you feel that what has been done is acceptable and will preclude parts of the bill. And you'll hear from folks that have been involved from the beginning of this, the representatives of these employees, the ones still active and the ones who have had to go through this process. We went on for hours last time. This format is not lending to people coming in to testify on this one particularly because they felt like something was done last time. And some don't even know. They're surprised that all the work that we did went nowhere. So it's filtering out there, but it's not because people aren't interested, and I've been getting calls. So I'll just leave it at that because there'll be a lot more fill in from other people to help us decide how much of this to move along. Thank you, and I'll take any questions if I can, and there'll be other people who might be able to answer the more in-depth ones better, or that will be answered already when you hear their testimony.
Thank you, Senator Miramont, for presenting the bill. Chairman Sylvester, will you please preside? I have to go and provide quorum for my other committee. I'll see you guys later. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. Let me get myself set up in a format to do that.
Chair Sylvester, would you like me to time?
That would be great. And Alyssa, can you send me the list of folks who are ready to go?
I sent it a little bit ago because on the subject line is LBHS testimony sign up. Sent at 8:42 a.m.
Okay, great. Well, as I did not think I was chairing, I did not have that one up. So why don't we go with, why don't we bring in Randy Bodge, Gerald Conley, and Adam Good.
Okay.
And I apologize that all your hard work is going to.
No worries. I don't see Randy Bodge, so I'm going to go ahead and promote Mr. Good.
All right, very good. Do we see Mr. Conley?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if you've noticed, but my hand is up.
I did not at all because I was doing about 3 other things, Representative. What can I do for you?
Well, I'd like to ask a question of the good senator if he's able to reply.
That is so true. We do need to ask questions of the senator, don't we? I'm sorry. I was talking to 3 other people about the later hearing and orders and things and got surprised by that. So Senator Miramont, would you like to answer some questions?
I have actually unmuted myself successfully. Thank you.
Very,
Yes,
very good. I believe Representative Drinkwater has a question for you.
Uh-oh.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair, and the good senator from Camden. I really appreciate you. I wasn't here for obviously the hearings in the 129th. Was there any comparison to what this plan is compared to what Social Security offers?
There was some, it was not a lot, just it was discovered by me and other people already knew it, that our long-term, there's not a real long-term disability for folks when they have to prove that they are disabled with the system we had in place. There's one, if it's clearly agreed upon by the groups that they had in place, that was available. But in the middle, people were tortured with this stuff. It went on for years. Social Security has one that takes effect pretty quickly and easily. So that was the difference. But other than that, I don't know that I could compare the plans. Somebody can though. Somebody today could. So that's what I meant about there's some really knowledgeable people coming along here today.
Well, I thought you were one of them.
Oh, no, gosh, no. You don't know that by now? No.
Sorry, just learning the ropes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else with a question for the good senator? Seeing none. Thank you, sir, for bringing the bill forward and for getting this conversation rolling in a direction. And hopefully we'll find a place for it to land.
Thank you.
All right, and so let's bring forward Adam Good.
Good morning, Representative Sylvester and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Labor and Housing. My name is Adam Good. I'm the Legislative and Political Director of the Maine AFL-CIO. We represent 40,000 working men and women in the state of Maine. We work to improve the lives and working conditions of our members and all working people. We testify in support of LD 1644. Should come as no surprise that I am not the expert that Senator Miramont referred to a number of times in his testimony. So I will read parts of my statement. Happy to take a stab at any questions. We testified in support of this bill in the 129th legislature. It was LD 1978. It was passed by this committee on its way to the two chambers before the legislature adjourned during COVID. And the legislation that was proposed in 2020 would have allowed disabled public employees to follow a process similar to Social Security disability insurance. So as the representative from Milford has just mentioned, SSDI typically sends a person to the doctor, give weight to the opinion of the treating specialist, have a residual functional assessment that ensures power lies with a professional who knows most about the person and their disability. People who access Social Security have a basic level of transparency and accountability. And the crux of this proposal in the 129th was that a similar level of transparency for working people with disabilities should exist when they approach the medical review board. As Senator Miramont mentioned, there were a number of heart-wrenching stories of public sector employees who work hard and are forced to fight under an unfair process. We're not going to have, I think, that slew of people come forward today. I think you all know that there are firefighters, school employees, and teachers who have just horrible stories that are marked by their inability to work or access disability benefits. So they're living close to poverty. I can't go into all the details as you probably will hear from a future person, but I think that the crux of it is that we think the MEPERS system should function somewhat more like Social Security in terms of transparency and accountability. I had this all planned out when we heard the bill in the 129th, but there's since been, I think, a number of changes and compromises, and I think that a number of public sector unions have had a very good relationship with some of the folks at MEPERS to hopefully bring you something that's slightly different this time. So don't want to speak out of turn. Happy to take any questions. Look forward to the rest of the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Good. Are there any questions from the committee for Mr. Good? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. Next, we have Gerard Conley.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Sylvester. I see Chairman Hickman has left, but I see many members of the Labor and Housing Committee present. My name is Jerry Conley. I'm an attorney in Portland, Maine. I have been practicing for 40 years, and one of my little boutique specialties is disability for Maine Public Employees Retirement System members. I'm proud to say that I was the second chair on this committee for a couple terms 30 years ago. I'm very sorry I can't live up to my obligations and bring a gift, as those of you who are familiar with it would know. And of course, being from Portland, I'd be bringing granola. But we'll turn to the merits of your bill, and a bill I'm proud to have participated in. I was here 2 years ago when the committee met and heard the same tough stories from many, many people. This bill was worked on very hard at that time, and things have changed greatly since then. And what I mean by that is I want to commend Sandy Matheson, the executive director of Maine PERS, and particularly her chief counsel, Mike Colleran. I believe they've listened to their membership and listened to the stakeholders who are involved in this process. And what has been put forth for this committee here today is really the sum of the work that has gone on for the last 2 years when everything fell apart because of the pandemic. I'm going to hit just the most important points of what this bill does, and I want to answer directly Representative Drinkwater's question. Social Security is a much easier system to get benefits in. Maine PERS, not so easy, and in fact, it's been very, very difficult, which is what led to this bill. What this does is it changes the definition of impossible, which used to be what you had to show to get past step 2 after you showed you had a disability, to being able to meet the definition of unable to perform the essential functions of his or her job with some sort of accommodation. It's a small change, but it makes a huge difference. They'll also be replacing the hearing officers, which are viewed as employees of the system, to be truly independent fact finders. And most importantly, this bill allows to basically assess the medical evidence put forth by the members. That'll be given sort of prima facie weight. And I think that's a big, big change. But I have to commend the system. Again, in these 2 years, they've also gone and got rid of the medical board, which was, the toughest aspect of the old system. That's been replaced, which the system did on its own without any legislation, with an outside entity, which is much more transparent, much more helpful by the way it interfaces with providers for members. So this bill is a culmination of a lot of work. There's a lot of technical changes in there, which I will stand by to try to help with any questions that members may have, or that even some of my colleagues who are here as stakeholders today might have. But I stand here before you as a former legislator and as somebody who's worked with disabled people for many years since. And all I can do is just commend the system for listening to its members and for allowing us to try to make it a fairer process. And really, that's what this bill is all about. Here to answer any questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. I see that Representative Bradstreet has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Conley, for being here. You mentioned getting rid of the medical board. Is it your opinion that the people on the medical board are not as qualified to assess a disability definition as, say, a medical expert?
Oh, no, they had quite qualified people on the medical board. Maybe some would take issue with that, but that really wasn't the problem, Representative Bradstreet. The issue was, it was sort of like the Star Chamber. The member never, ever met anybody on the medical board. I've never met anybody on the medical board. A member who was saying they were disabled never got a chance to talk to these folks. They never spoke to any of their doctors. It just was a very non-transparent process. And I think it was unfair. And, this new process that the system has put in on its own, these folks have much more transparent. They have questionnaires that the members get to fill out or to help fill out. They will talk to their doctors. My understanding is that they will even talk to the people themselves who are claiming to be disabled. So I don't want to say they were unqualified. It's just that the way it was set up was very, very sort of secretive.
Okay, so it was a systemic problem in your opinion.
I would say you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Gear.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks for being here, Mr. Connolly. And I certainly, from my perspective, I'm trying to spin up to speed on the historical context here, not having served in the last legislature. And so if you take into consideration the changes that have been made independently over the last 2 years, is the bill still needed? I mean, are there parts of it that are necessary and parts that aren't? Can you just kind of walk me through that?
Yes, I do believe it is necessary. The changes that the system has made are helpful, but it's replacing only one particular piece, which is this medical board. What else is happening here is that if a member is unhappy with the decision that the system ultimately makes, with the help of this new entity, the member can ask for an independent medical evaluation to be done by a neutral person who's neither for the system nor for the member, and get to meet with that provider. And that healthcare provider's findings would then be considered. Ultimately, the executive director or the system itself has the final decision, but the member gets a much fairer bite at the apple, shall we say, if you want to call it that, by way of somebody taking a look at their disability and whether or not it makes it difficult for them to do the duties of their job. So the bill is still needed. In fact, I will tell you, you're from York County, and I've represented a number of people from your district. And actually, two of the saddest cases I ever had, I believe they would have gotten a much fairer shot under this system, and they both lost. And there's no way to turn, because, as you know, you can't apply for Social Security if you've spent your life working as a state employee.
So it's mainly the ability to have that independent medical evaluation and have that be considered in the process. That's the key.
Yes, I would say that that is a very important part of this bill and something that will make the process much, much fairer.
Thank you.
Representative Drinkwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Conley. Thank you for your expertise and for your service just a couple of years ago in the House. Let's talk about the appeal process. I was just trying to find in the proposed bill that if the claimant loses at all the hearings, he then can appeal it to a court. And I think I read that that's a de novo hearing, which is, we know, is they start from the beginning. Who is that true? And Social Security does pay for a lawyer. So would that also follow Social Security, that the system has to pay for the claimant's lawyer?
Well, it would not be a de novo hearing whereby you'd bring in all of your evidence and everything. It actually talks about the specific type of review that the Superior Court judge would have. So that is a very different type of application when you get at that level, but you don't start from scratch, for sure. It would command the judge to look at all the evidence which is presented to him in the appeal packet in a de novo fashion. So he or she would be weighing that evidence for in a fresh sort of way. So you're accurate about that. In the Social Security system, there's really no appeal. The judge, the administrative judge, and it is a judge in that forum, makes that decision, and then you could go on to court, but a very difficult road lies ahead for you. And even in these cases, with a de novo standard, very, very difficult road would lie ahead for an appellant. The further up the chain you go, the less chance you have for winning.
And what about attorney fees?
Well, attorney's fees in Social Security cases are limited to $5,500 of whatever a Social Security beneficiary's reclamation is if they are successful in their case. And again, Social Security is much easier than these cases. These particular cases, and I can tell you, I'm very fortunate. I have represented many members of the Maine Education Association, and they're the only entity of which I am aware who actually will pay for its members' lawyers to take on these cases. I've taken on cases where individuals did not have anybody to pay except for themselves, and you do not get paid in those cases unless you're successful. And if you are successful in those cases, I can say that attorney's fees to go all the way to hearing could run as much as $25,000, $35,000. These are extremely complicated matters. You do not get an appeal packet of less than 1,500 pages of medical records. And you have many, many days of hearings is usually what is involved before you get to an end result. And they go on for a couple of years. So this bill does have a provision on attorney's fees, but it would not take any effect unless you were successful. I can tell you, as someone who does these cases, to get to that point, there have not to date been a high rate of success in winning if you have to go to the very end.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Conley? Mr. Conley, I have a quick one, and thank you for being here today. Maybe you could describe what's in the packet now and what would be in the packet if the bill was successful. For example, the independent medical information, and would the person be able to, the person's testimony be included in that appeal packet?
If you were going to let's say to court, which I've done many times, I've gone to Superior Court, and I'm sure Mr. Colleran, Attorney Colleran, who represents the system on the other side, knows, because his agency has had to prepare these appeal packets when I have to go to court, and they are literally thousands of pages. All testimony from the claimant, all testimony from any doctors who might have come, and doctors actually do, unlike many other proceedings, show up to testify on behalf of their patients, whether by deposition or live. All of that would be in the appeal packet, as would be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of past medical reports, as well as the hearing officer's findings. Some of those decisions are 25, 35 pages. So yes, all of that would go to a court. I don't know if I understand your question exactly.
Nope, that's what I wanted you to just sort of explain. You said it was a lot of pages, but I just wanted the committee to hear what exactly is in there. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say one other thing. I have to say hi to Representative Warren, because I actually served with her father in the legislature, which gives away my age, and I want to wish her a lot of luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let him know.
Perfect. Thank you to the Honorable Gerald Conley. And I see no other questions. We will bring forward Jeff McCabe.
Good morning, Senator Hickman, Representative Sylvester, distinguished members of the Labor and Housing Committee. My name is Jeff McCabe. I serve as the Legislative and Political Director for Maine Service Employees Association, and here in strong support of LD 1644. I have to say, I remember a lot of aspects of public hearings over the last 12 years, but there are only a few that I remember as vividly as LD 1978 from last session. The bill passed the committee and was headed for votes in the House and the Senate, but due to COVID, never really progressed. Outside of the legislature, work continued on this bill. Work continued in the stakeholder process, a stakeholder process which you've heard a little bit about. And I just have to say that, when it comes to issues that are this large, this important, it's great to see that work often carries on outside the legislative session. So I wanted to publicly thank Sandy Matheson and her team, Michael, Kathy Morin, and others for hearing the concerns and taking feedback last session. The staff at Maine PERS has worked with the stakeholders and internally to address concerns by individuals and committee members raised last session. The bill you are looking at attempts to address a number of issues that have been encountered when applying for disability benefits. The bill attempts to provide a more transparent and a fairer process for individuals who apply. You've heard so much early before and so much from Jerry Conley this morning, and I'm really appreciative that this morning that I am not a lawyer, although I do play one on TV. And with that being said, I'm happy to take questions, but I would suggest that the committee direct a lot of their question to Maine PERS and take the time to digest this info. And with that, I'm happy to work with the committee in between the work session as well as at the work session, and really look forward to seeing this issue move forward.
Thank you, Mr. McCabe. Are there any questions for Mr. McCabe? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We'll bring forward John Kaczynski.
Excellent. Chairman Sylvester, other esteemed members of the Labor and Housing Committee, I just got my third child off to school this morning, so I missed some of the other testimony. I'm a bit harried, perhaps more than before or prior testimonies, but I would like to hit a few points, and I have submitted written testimony in strong support on behalf of the Maine Education Association for LD 1644. This really does represent, I hope, consensus with Maine Public Employees Retirement System about the changes that are necessary to make the process fairer for employees. I would encourage, as I've heard other people say today, I would encourage legislators to look at the testimony last year on LD 1978. It was very tough to listen to. It was probably harder for them to share. And so we purposefully did not go back to those folks and encourage them to come today, but would encourage you to read their testimony. I would also, if the committee, just to understand the reasons behind this bill and why it's so important, if the committee would like, I would also encourage you to Google the name Bob Sprankle. His story appeared on the front page of the Press Herald. It was a sad tale of someone who was clearly disabled and was unable to access the disability system through MEPERS. If you could name a bill in someone's honor, I would ask Senator Miramont to name it after him. This is not an attempt to game the system. There are no gimmicks here. This is about creating a more fair process. This is about bringing this close to parity with Social Security, not better than the Social Security disability system, but close to parity with Social Security. As Jeff McCabe said, really want to thank MEPERS, Sandy Matheson, Michael Colleran, and Kathy Morin. They heard that testimony last year. They are working on changes. They have developed some changes, but hopefully this bill will pass in its entirety. We believe we have spent months now talking with MEPERS, negotiating out details, language specific. Hopefully Michael Colleran will talk more about that. But we think these changes are necessary just to bring a better system. Too many have fallen through the cracks over the years. We think this will help. We think this is a solution and appreciate the sponsor bringing it forward today. I will do my best to answer any questions and thank you for your time. And we hope you vote ought to pass on this important bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. I see that Representative Drinkwater has a question for you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Representative Drinkwater.
We just heard from Attorney Connolly that MEA is in a good position to help pay for legal fees for their teachers that are seeking disability. So that brings to mind two questions. One, how do you do that? And two, wouldn't you recommend that other unions offer the same?
I'm not going to offer an opinion about other unions, but I will say Maine Education Association does a lot for our members. And this is one of the many services that we provide to our members. And that's why I think we're seeing membership, frankly, has risen steadily over the years. More educators in the state of Maine want to be part of the MEA, not only because of the work we do to advance public education, but the work we do to make sure that school employees, teachers and ed techs and others have the protections they need at work, specifically when they become disabled. We want them to be able to access the benefits that they should have earned.
Does the MEA offer long-term disability insurance for its members?
This is the long-term disability program for public employees in the state of Maine. This is it. And this isn't working. And that's why we've come here several years asking for help and adjustments.
So does the MEA buy a policy to cover all of their members?
No, sir. This is, let me be clear, MEPERS is the long-term disability program for public employees. So if we were to buy another program, it would be secondary to this, which is the primary disability program for public employees in the state of Maine.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Kaczynski? Seeing none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And that is the end of folks testifying as proponents. Now I bring forward Michael Colleran, speaking neither for nor against for MEPERS.
Good morning, Representative Sylvester, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Labor and Housing. My name is Michael Colleran, and I'm Chief Deputy Executive Director and General Counsel for the Maine Public Employees Retirement System. MEPERS is neither for nor against LD 1644. We are here to provide information and offer any assistance the committee might need regarding this bill. LD 1644 is an updated version of a bill, LD 1978, that was reported out favorably as amended by this committee last year, was not acted on by the full legislature before adjournment. MEPERS has worked with the sponsor and stakeholders on the language of LD 1644 to address concerns that we had raised with the original bill. It was clear from the moving testimony the committee heard last year that changes were needed to the Maine PERS disability retirement program. Maine PERS had started making changes to the program prior to that time and has continued to make improvements over the past year. One of the most significant changes was the disbanding of the medical board, which was perhaps a primary objective of the bill's proponents. Maine PERS has contracted with the University of Massachusetts Medical School for medical review services in place of the former medical board. We also have instituted a process where any denial of an application for disability retirement benefits must first be reviewed by me and our 2 deputy executive directors to ensure that the application was fairly considered and the result is correct. LD 1644 incorporates the elimination of the medical board into statute. It requires that an applicant be offered an independent medical examination prior to any application denial. It makes changes to the appeals process that are favorable to members, including reimbursement of up to $12,000 in attorney's fees for members who were successful on an appeal. LD 1644 also calls for Maine PERS to convene a stakeholder group to develop an implementation plan for providing mandatory long-term disability insurance coverage to retirement system members through their employers. Mr. Kaczynski's statement a moment ago shows a problem between, or a mismatch between the expectation of Maine governmental employees and what the Maine PERS disability retirement program is. By statute, the disability retirement program provides a retirement for permanent disabilities. And so to qualify for it, the individual has to be permanently disabled. Long-term disability insurance typically does not have that permanence requirement. And so we have found in working with stakeholders over the past few years that there is a gap for many government employees on income protection for those who are disabled, but not permanently disabled. Maine PERS disability retirement is not available unless the member is permanently disabled. Most employers do not offer long-term disability insurance, and those that do frequently have low uptake on the coverage because it's voluntary. Providing mandatory long-term disability insurance to employers would solve this problem. There are costs and other issues that should be studied and incorporated into an implementation plan that works for both employers and employees. LD 1644 provides for that study with a report due to the 131st legislature. Thank you for your consideration of this testimony. I would be happy to answer your questions and will be available at your work session.
Thank you, Mr. Colleran. I see that Representative Bradstreet has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Colleran. I noticed there's a definition of healthcare provider in the bill. Has that changed significantly from what we have now, that definition?
It does not, but there was a need to have that term as a defined term that was not required in the prior version of the statute.
Representative Drinkwater.
Thank you, sir. So listening to testimony from previous people, they're talking about, like the MEA offering, attorney's fees. And do you know if the Maine State Employers Union offers a long-term disability insurance that is part of their package when they join the union?
I am not an expert on that at all, Representative. I know they provide some sort of income replacement, but that'd be a better question for Mr. McCabe.
Certainly. So you've obviously recognized the fact that some improvements needed to be made. Are we also working on more improvements?
Well, we will continually work on improving this program. One of the improvements we're currently working on is, you've heard some reference to the length of time it takes for our appeals process. And I know Senator Miramont was particularly concerned about that from one of his constituents. And we're working on shortening that up. We've made a lot of progress on that. And one of the endeavors we're now embarking on now is to minimize the amount of time that a case would go back and forth between the hearing officer and the executive director, and that should help shorten appeals further.
And Mr. Chair, if I may just indulge in one quick question.
You may, sir.
Finally, I asked the good senator about comparison between the disability process for Social Security versus the disability process through Maine PERS. Are we similar to what Social Security does or what?
There are differences in the requirements for disability between those two systems and in the process and in the benefits. I'd be happy to provide for your work session a summary of those differences.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Representative Pebworth, did you have a question? Representative Gear.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for being here, Mr. Colleran. Sometimes I need to restate things just to make sure I understand clearly. So can you just check me on this? So Maine PERS disability is only available if the disability is permanent, and then the long-term disability is what will be studied so that it will be determined to add a long-term disability coverage for a disability that is not permanent. Is that correct?
That is correct on both points.
Thank you.
I see that Representative Bradstreet has put his hand down. Are there any other questions for Mr. Colleran? Seeing none, thank you for being here today, sir.
Thank you.
I believe that is the last person to testify. Is that correct, Alyssa?
Yes.
So I will close the public hearing on LD 1644. Is Representative Miramont here? Or is it Representative Millette here?
Yes, she is. I'm promoting her now.
Perfect. Senator Miramont.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Look at that. I can even unmute now. I just wanted to clear up Senator Hickman knew he had to be in VLA along with this meeting today. And he was trying to track you down this morning. And then he went to me. And I told him I had to present a bill at 10 o'clock as well, like Representative Cuddy. So he was scrambling to try to make sure we were all covered here today, but I wanted you to know that in case something's going on out on Peaks, that wonderful place for communication today.
I have a very big bill today, so I was doing that this morning, as you can imagine.
Everybody.
Yep. So everybody, it's that time of year, and so I was not checking my messages.
I didn't want you to feel left out. That's all.
No, I appreciate that. I went back and looked, and of course he did reach out to me, and as always, as I've learned in 25 years of marriage, the mistake is mine, as always.
Wasn't to assign blame. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. No. I appreciate everybody looking out for us, and so we are both leaving at 10 o'clock, so we shall see what happens here. But I am going to open the hearing on LD 1656 and welcome Representative Millette to present her bill.
Good morning. I don't know if I'm ever going to get used to that wormhole.
Never try not to. My advice.
Good morning, Senator Hickman, Representative Sylvester, and esteemed members of the Committee on Labor and Housing. My name is Rebecca Millette, and I represent House District 30, which is most of Cape Elizabeth. I am honored to present LD 1656, an act to promote energy efficient, affordable housing. Many times as I've sat on my local school board, chaired the Children's Caucus, and served on the Education Committee, I've heard from educators about how they find themselves being asked to solve some of society's most difficult problems as they try to educate our kids, fundamental issues that they can't address in the classroom. They know that in order to succeed in school, in order to succeed in their lives, children and their families need healthy, affordable, secure homes. When families struggle to pay rent and mortgages, they are at higher risk of instability, eviction, and even homelessness, which is then linked to food insecurity, poor health, lower academic achievement, and more foster care placement among children. It's from this perspective, from that understanding of the interconnectedness of these issues and the crises facing our state, that I am approaching energy efficient, affordable housing development. This legislation addresses the issue with the seriousness and comprehensiveness it deserves, leveraging each dollar invested to advance three critical goals. The fair market rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in Maine is $1,029. In order to afford this level of rent and utilities, without paying more than 30% of income on housing, a household must earn $3,430 monthly or $41,156 annually. Assuming a 40-hour work week, 52 weeks per year, this level of income translates into an hourly housing wage of $19.79. Maine's minimum wage currently stands at $12.15. This squeeze means that Mainers have less money for other necessities like nutritious food, transportation, healthcare, let alone retirement savings. Research shows that the shortage of affordable housing costs the American economy about $2 trillion a year in lower wages and productivity. Without affordable housing, families have constrained opportunities to increase earnings, causing slower GDP growth. In fact, researchers estimate that the growth in GDP between 1964 and 2009 would have been 13.5% higher if families had better access to affordable housing. This in turn would have led to a $1.7 trillion increase in income, or $8,775 in additional wages per worker. We must get serious about investing in affordable housing to help promote Mainers' health and economic security. Maine's residential homes are responsible for 20% of our state's greenhouse gas emissions. Quote, the most cost-effective time to improve a building's energy efficiency is during construction. New net zero efficiency buildings combine energy efficiency and renewable energy generation to create homes with very minimal utility costs and emissions. And this is from Maine's Climate Council. The Climate Council summarizes well the challenges our state faces due to climate change. There's a litany of issues. I've included them in testimony for your reading at your leisure. It's imperative that we leverage every strategy to reduce Maine's greenhouse gases, and committing resources to building energy efficient, affordable housing is one such tool. The green energy efficiency standards in LD 1656 are not a major step above the current Maine Housing Green Standards, which means they are in reach. This bill provides 3 different ways for developers to meet higher green standards: Passive House, LEED Gold, and Living Building Challenge. Passive house standards tend to be the most practical to meet because so much of it is about the exterior construction. LEED standards are easier to achieve because there are so many different avenues in which you can accrue points. Living Building Challenge is a more aggressive standard. It will include the same types of things as a passive house project, like energy efficiency and excellent indoor air quality, but there are more avenues for achieving the standard. Passive housing also isn't effectively more expensive than a standard construction budget and can be built with a lot of standard construction techniques. There's room to be innovative, but it doesn't have to be more expensive to do so. It's already been done. This is a win-win-win. Raising standards lowers operating costs for those who manage the properties. It's a win for developers because the cost of development aren't significantly higher and they receive access to additional public funding to offset those costs. And it's a healthier environment and lower utility costs for residents. In the Education Committee, we often hear about the desperate need for our youth to pursue careers in the trades and work every year to find ways to support our career and technology programs, as well as workforce training through our community colleges. This bill takes a different approach by requiring housing developed to use project labor agreements to raise working standards for construction trades and to expand our registered apprenticeship programs, thereby helping to grow the pipeline of skilled construction workers. This legislation can help ease Maine's affordable housing shortage while making progress towards meeting Maine's need for skilled tradesmen and tradeswomen. Energy efficient building experts and Maine's need for skilled tradesmen and tradeswomen, energy efficient building experts, and jobs that offer fair pay and benefits. Investing in green affordable housing is about increasing available housing, addressing chronic and severe shortages, and helping thousands of Mainers who find themselves being squeezed out of their homes. It's about building better, greener homes to begin to meet our commitment to addressing climate change and protecting our kids from a worsening global crisis. It's about raising our wage and labor standards and creating good jobs that can support families and allow tradespeople to return home to work here in Maine. This legislation will support the development we need with a high bar for both green building standards and affordability. It also prioritizes flexibility, making sure developers have many ways to meet these high energy and climate resiliency standards, and that the housing that is built fits the communities who need it. It also raises the bar for Maine's labor standards, creates quality jobs, and will help to fuel our state's recovery from the pandemic downturn. LD 1656 recognizes the interconnectedness of the challenges we face and the need for a comprehensive solution. I thank you for your attention and hope you will join me in support of this bill.
Thank you, Representative. I see that Representative Bradstreet has a question for you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative, for bringing this to us. Is there anything in the bill to address the possibility of diminishing returns on providing the most energy efficient construction possible, as opposed to what the benefits are going to be? And who is to determine that? That's one question I have.
Thank you, Representative Bradstreet. I guess I'm not clear on the question. Can you try it again? I am a little bit out over my skis on housing, so bear with me.
That's fair. Then I'll hold that question back for somebody later on. Then
Thank you.
I do have another question though. On other bills, we've had a lot of testimony in this committee about project labor agreements, which essentially requires union workers, and we find that around 90% of Maine workers are not unionized. And those projects that do require project labor agreements tend to be more expensive than those that don't. So is this the most efficient way to spend the money if we require a PLA?
Well, I would refer you to a study that the University of Maine did on PLAs, where they actually found that they did not result in substantially higher costs and actually helped for projects be completed on time, because they make sure that everybody has reached a common understanding about the timing and the resources that are going to be required. And in the end, it actually didn't have a negative impact.
Representative Prescott.
Well, thank you. Hi. There's a big push for these small houses coming in to solve this unaffordable housing problem, but they've already pushed upon us that they do not want to comply with the safety regulations. Will they be included in this bill?
I don't believe the way this bill has been written that would fall under that, but I will have to check and get back to you, Representative.
All right, well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions for the good representative? Representative Drinkwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Millette. It actually seems funny to call you representative because all I've ever known you as is senator.
I know.
So listen, my question.
Hey, you, Representative Drinkwater. I don't care.
Yes, so the answer to all, yes, okay. My concern is about, I live in a rural area. I'm not close to transportation hubs and routes. In the point system, if I'm reading this correctly, it's saying preference will be given to those that live close to transportation hubs and where there's a chronic shortage of affordable housing. To me, it sounds like my rural area is going to be disadvantaged. Can you help me understand that we will have an equal chance at some of these contracts?
Yeah, I believe that the highest level will be given to the energy efficient and also to the quantity that's going to be provided. I do recognize that concern, Representative Drinkwater. I guess and I had that as well. Where I came down on it is I'm in recognition that even a bill like this with $100 million, it's not even going to come close to addressing all of our housing crisis. It's unfortunate, but as we all know, as you all know, housing is an incredibly capital intensive activity. And so it's going to require multiple infusions to actually get a comprehensive approach to our housing crisis. So I do believe that there are other housing funding vehicles that have been giving equal attention to rural versus urban. But I also think that in our conversations going forward, it's good to include ideas that address our climate crisis, and some of that has to do with transportation, energy efficiency, of those issues.
Thank you.
Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you once again, Mr. Chair. That study you cited that the University of Maine did, could we have that for the work session, or at least the highlights of it? And secondly,
Absolutely, Representative. I'll make sure you get it.
thank you. And secondly, I'm wondering why, you haven't, of course, you haven't been in all of our hearings, but we have a lot of discussions about PLAs. I'm wondering what prompted you to include project labor agreements in the bill.
Well, as I said in my testimony, I've been sitting in the education world now for nearly 16 years. And the one thing that's become very clear is that there is no one answer to working to make sure that all of our children have equal opportunity at success in life. And there are a lot of different pressure points that can work against them or provide real obstacles. One of them in general is what's happening in the family. That's a huge pressure point. We have quite a few students who are living, children who are in poverty. I also recognize that as the state, we're not paying workers competitive wages with many states around the country. As an example, we graduate a lot of engineers from the University of Maine system, but many of them leave Maine because we don't pay in Maine competitive wages with other places like Texas, California, et cetera. And so it's my understanding that, and then of course, we're experiencing this workforce shortage in our trades area. It is a perennial discussion now, as Representative Drinkwater knows, in the Education Committee, trying to find ways where we can encourage students to pursue these careers, leverage resources, and I view PLAs as one of those.
Are there any other questions for the good representative? Seeing none, thank you for presenting your bill today, Representative.
Thank you so much. And I apologize. I'm likely going to be popping in and out on the hearing. I have Education Committee at the same time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for being here. I am now need to leave to go present my bill in HHS. And so Representative Pebworth is going to take the gavel until Senator Hickman can return. Good luck, Representative.
Thank you, Chair Sylvester. We'll look forward to your return. Alyssa, are there any co-sponsors who are here to give testimony?
One sec, I'll have to pull up the notice because I don't know the co-sponsors.
And I see Kate Lackford is ready to go.
I don't think we have any co-sponsors.
All right. Then do I have a volunteer to time our good folks giving testimony? Thank you, Amy Rader. I appreciate that. So, Ms. Blackford, Representative Rader will be doing our timing for us today. And with that, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. To the esteemed members of the Joint Standing Committee on Housing and Labor and Housing, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Kate Blackford, and I am the Public Policy Director for the Maine People's Alliance. MPA is Maine's largest community action organization with over 32,000 members across the state. And our mission is to create a world where everyone has what they need, contributes what they can, and no one is left behind. I'm here today to speak on behalf of LD 1656 because this bill offers a bold solution to address three intertwined crises facing our state: a severe lack of affordable housing, a lack of jobs and skilled workers in our green building sector, and the contributions our buildings are making to climate change. Precisely because it addresses these three issues together, LD 1656 will be far more effective than any efforts to address them individually. By using an investment in critically needed affordable housing as a catalyst to invest in our green construction capacity and develop our skilled workforce, it will have a significant economic multiplier effect. Each dollar invested in affordable housing already boosts local economies by leveraging public and private resources to generate income, including resident earnings and additional tax revenue, and supports job creation and retention. This is a bold bill that is scaled to address the magnitude of the three crises that we're facing for the sake of all of us. I'm sure that today, after me, you're going to hear numerous stories about the layers of harm and struggle that come from the lack of affordable housing on health and well-being and stress, instability for families. You'll also hear stories of people forced to leave Maine or struggle to make ends meet in our construction trades because of the changes around living, that changes in living wages and benefits could have, not just on families and communities. But in addition to addressing these really vital human needs, investing in energy efficient, affordable housing built with living wages will help us all. It means more people who aren't struggling to make ends meet every month and who have more money to spend in the local economy. Higher labor, safety, and wage standards means workers do better, and that Maine becomes more attractive to workers who might otherwise choose not to live in Maine or be forced to work out of state and commute home due to depressed wages. This all leads to growing, healthier communities and economies, and which benefits us all. In addition to the obvious benefits of easing the impact on climate change, green construction requirements will open up more opportunities for innovative, sustainable construction businesses that thrive in Maine. That in turn means more people making a good living and spending their money in Maine. So how can we say no to a critical investment in our future like this? Maine People's Alliance supports LD 1656 and urges you to vote ought to pass. And I'm happy to take any questions.
That was perfectly timed, by the way.
Thank you very
Despite
much.
my stumbles.
Does the committee
Monday.
have questions for Ms. Blackford? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony. Next, we'll have Adam Good, followed by Craig Saddlemeyer. Mr. Good, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Good morning, Representative Pebworth and members of the Labor and Housing Committee. My name is Adam Good, serve as the Legislative and Political Director of the Maine AFL-CIO. We represent 40,000 working men and women in the state of Maine who work to improve the lives and working conditions of our members and all working people. This bill is a creative approach to address three problems facing Maine. We face an affordable housing crisis, a lack of jobs and people to fill those jobs, and a climate crisis. Maine is short more than 20,000 housing units. The housing we do have is a major cause of greenhouse gas emissions, and this bill provides an option to address the housing crises through an investment in affordable housing that also addresses our need for skilled, good-paying jobs in the trades. Simply put, we need more affordable housing, and we need more tradespeople that build that housing. You have access to my testimony, and I'm sure you'll read the parts where I try to address the three different approaches for this bill, because there's already been a couple of questions about project labor agreements. I'm going to try to focus a little bit on that. The housing that's developed in this bill would be done through project labor agreements that raise working standards for construction trades and expand our registered apprenticeship programs. A PLA is a type of project used in the construction industry that sets the terms and conditions of employment on large projects of long duration and significant design complexity. It's a pre-hire, project-wide agreement that applies to single construction projects and establishes ground rules that cover all contractors and all construction workers on the site. establishing common rules across all contractors, and providing a system to ensure all different trades and contractors work together to complete their individual tasks and makes sure that the project is done efficiently and on time. Just a couple questions that came up already that I suspect people who tend to be somewhat skeptical of PLAs will ask, and questions they have. Obviously, it sometimes results in workers getting paid more. There's a body of evidence that PLAs don't significantly raise costs of projects because the company has access to good workers who do the job well, do it on time. And I think that there's contractors and construction management folks who will say that sometimes a PLA saves money because you have a reliable workforce, you know what you're getting, and the people are highly trained and good at what they do. Often PLAs are negotiated in a day. They're not these long, drawn out types of negotiations. They obviously can lead to safer outcomes on the job site, which is efficient and saves time. And I know there's a lot of intricacies around how you bid on PLAs, but our understanding is that non-union businesses can apply for PLAs, can go through the same bidding process, and it doesn't exclude anybody in specific. It just makes it so everybody's playing by the same rules. So that ends my 3 minutes. Happy to take a stab at any questions. Look forward to the rest of the testimony this morning.
Thank you so much, Mr. Good. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, I thank you for your testimony and will promote Craig Salmer, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Representative Pebworth and the honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Labor and Housing. My name is Craig Saddlemeyer, and I work for the Raise Up Housing Cooperative in Lewiston, which is a resident-owned affordable housing organization. We develop and operate our own properties together as residents. LD 1656, in my opinion, offers a bold solution to help create an estimated 1,000 units of needed housing over the next 2 years. It provides flexible programming requirements so that it can be used statewide in different communities and in combination with different types of mixed income housing developments. It also provides targeted priorities to make sure we are maximizing benefit for low income residents in need. Now, while rental assistance programs address affordability for low-income tenants, LD 1656 is going to address the quantity and quality of our affordable housing supply. At this moment, the available housing supply for low-income people is shrinking or altogether non-existent. Recall the tragic story of Russell Williams, a person living without shelter in Brunswick, who froze to death on a cold night in November of 2019 with a rental assistance voucher in his hand because he could not find an available unit to rent. For our housing supply that does exist, much of it is old and simply does not meet the needs of vulnerable renters, especially those living with a physical disability, with large families, or with mental illness. Put simply, we need better housing. Housing that promotes health and does not poison developing children with lead or mold. Housing that is welcoming to vulnerable people and does not discriminate against applicants because they are poor, Black, Indigenous, or people of color, living with a disability, or formerly homeless. We need housing that reduces our carbon footprint and lasts 100 years, not housing that wastes energy and requires replacement in 20 years. We need housing ownership and management that is committed to operating the property for the maximum benefit to residents, connecting them to services and resources, promoting their empowerment, self-sufficiency, and social mobility. Not ownership that discards tenants as soon as they become inconvenient or less lucrative than the next option. And we need to build this on a committed scale that creates good long-term jobs so that our residential construction industry can grow to the size that we need to sustainably house our people today and in the future. I've spoken to builders, architects, and engineers who are equally unhappy with this situation and would like to build good homes for the regular folks who need it most. But so long as the only paying customers are people building luxury second and third homes, that is what the industry will serve. LD 1656 makes a real investment to create the incentive for the industry to change and serve this urgent need of affordable housing. Our affordable housing shortage is severe and will only.
You're at time.
Okay, thank you.
Can you wrap it up? Did you have a
last sentence? Yes. Our housing shortage is severe and will only worsen if we don't address it on a large scale. And that is why I'm asking you to support 1656. It's a bold solution we need to guarantee good homes for every Mainer.
Thank you so much, Mr. Settlemyer. I see a question from Representative Drinkwater.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I bet that's the first time you've heard that. You say that we develop and operate our own properties. Are you using state funds when you develop some of these, or using federal funds? Talk me through how you develop these. Where does the funding come from?
From everywhere we can find it. So yes, we participate in federal programs like Home and CDBG administered by the City of Lewiston. We get private financing. We also do fundraising through private foundations and individual donations. And we are currently in the process. We have not completed a tax credit project yet, but we are in the process of applying for tax credit funds administered by the Maine Housing Authority for the 4% walk-in program.
Thank you.
And I see a question from Representative Gear.
Thank you, Representative Pebworth. Mr. Sotomayor, thank you for being here. I'm curious, it sounds like you've had some, in your work and with regard to this bill in particular, you've had some conversations with developers and contractors. I think one of the things that is so striking when you look around our housing market is that everyone is focused on building those high-end properties. And I'm curious if you could share a little bit more about your conversations with those folks about how they would shift or what would be needed for them to shift their focus into the types of projects they'd be working on.
I can say a little bit more. I mean, I didn't ask permission to share their names, or the details. So we are, our organization has been doing building renovations on our 100-year-old triple deckers here in Lewiston, and we're working on our first new construction project. We're going to do it passive house, and I've been talking to a lot of passive house builders, and they're all really excited about our project and say like they'd like to do more work like this. And when they are telling me who their typical clients are, they say it is people with really big, really nice homes, because that's who the paying customer is. And that they have a strong desire to be a part of something that feels like it's having a deeper impact for folks in need. And when the opportunity presents itself, they are happy to participate. I haven't probed in terms of asking them exactly what they'd like to see, but it's come up in numerous conversations with a lot of different, we've had really great interest in our project, despite being a very small development. We've had seven different architecture firms bid on our development, and same for construction managers as well. So I've been talking to a lot of these folks and hearing similar things.
I have a follow-up, Madam Chair.
Please proceed.
Yeah, is there, I'm just with the folks that I've spoken with, it seems like with regard to the affordability and also lost my train of thought here. Oh, the ability to make the properties energy efficient, there seems to be a lack of incentives or positive financial programs to access to put that part of the project in. Is that actually a big barrier?
The question are there barriers to making the housing as energy efficient as this bill proposes?
Yes. Sorry.
I don't know how to answer that question simply. I guess I will say that Maine Housing has improved its programs to support the inclusion of passive house design standards, and even recognizes that we'll adjust the cost cap slightly to allow for passive house construction. So that's an important piece there. I think as was stated earlier, if one is going to build at scale. If you're already doing a large new construction project, the gap to get to this higher efficiency standard isn't that bad. What this funding is doing is just creating the possibility to create the number of units that we need and make sure that we do it well. Make sure that we're not cutting corners, making sure that we're building housing for the future, not housing that's just to limp along a little bit longer. So I guess I think I understand your question, and what I'd put simply is, we have the information and the technology to do good green design now, and the barrier isn't so much to opt into that. Some developers may opt out, for some kind of corner cutting reason, but I think it's just a little nudge to get everyone to meet that standard. The bigger issue is we just need the money to build the housing, period, and build it under fair labor practices, and that's what this program will do.
Thank you.
Are there other questions for Mr. Saddlemeyer? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today. Next, we'll have Ed Fallon and then Ethan Strimling. Good morning, Mr. Fallon. You can unmute and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Senator Hickman, Representative Sylvester, and honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Labor and Housing. My name is Ed Fallon. I have lived in Maine for over 4 years and now live in Lisbon with my granddaughter. I would like to testify in support of LD 1656. As a veteran, I am concerned that returning veterans with PTSD or other mental health issues will not find their way to proper resources, such as housing, good paying jobs, as well as necessary mental health treatment. After they have served our country, we should not abandon them. They must get access to the resources they need. And safe, decent, and affordable housing is a key to putting them on a path to a successful transition back home. This is a serious problem that affects everyone, not just veterans. We need to act boldly now to address this issue. A friend of mine spent 4 years in a rental room in Lewiston with her partner because she could not find an apartment to live in. Before that, she lived in her car. When I had moved to Maine, I lived in a dingy, substandard apartment in Lewiston because it was all I could afford. This bill would create 20,000 units of energy efficient housing that will help address the housing crisis in Maine, and it would come none too soon. A granddaughter of mine also lives in Lewiston, just had a baby. The one I live with, who cares for me and is expecting. I hope we can adopt a new approach for providing safe, decent, and affordable energy efficient housing for all Mainers, so my family can find the quality housing they need as their families expand. It is the right thing to do. Please support LD 1656. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Fallon, and also for your service. We appreciate your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee?
I doubt it.
Seeing none, thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Ethan Strimling.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Ethan Strimling. I'm the former mayor of Portland and was a former state senator and actually chaired this committee. And in understanding that I am supposed to bring a treat when I return, I have a little bowl of chocolate-covered almonds that if anybody would like to stop by, you are welcome to get. Anyway, thank you, and I am here to testify in support. And I'm here to testify in support because actually the city of Portland modeled very similar legislation this past fall, which received overwhelming support of the people of the city of Portland. We passed what was called the Green New Deal, and the Green New Deal was very similar. It provided affordable housing, better wages for workers, and better environmental standards for all new development. And despite $1 million being spent against us, that said these were going to increase costs and reduce the number of projects that would be coming forward, there has been no sign of that after the first 6 months. In fact, bids are still coming in. Some are right on target with what the expectation was. The apprenticeship requirements people are able to meet, the environmental standards people are able to meet, and the new the new affordable housing standards people are able to meet. So we recognize down in Portland that if you really want to try to both transform our economy and build the infrastructure we need, you have to focus on housing, on wages, and on the environment. And that's why we put forward the referendum, and it passed with over 60% of the vote, as I said, despite $1 million of opposition to try to defeat it. So I strongly encourage this committee to move forward with this legislation and to fully fund it, because I believe it can do for the rest of the state what we know it is going to do for the city of Portland. So thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And I see Representative Bradstreet has his hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Strimling, for being here. Have you had a chance to assess the per apartment or per unit cost yet of what the project in Portland has?
The per unit cost in terms of our Green New Deal?
Yes, in terms of what I think you said you're getting bids then? So the bids.
Yeah.
Has it been figured out to per unit cost yet?
The city bids that have been coming in, I don't know that we've seen any in terms of housing, the housing piece of it. But when we did the assessments of the costs around housing, the new environmental standards, really the new environmental standards are where a lot of the industry is going anyway. It's just codifying it to make sure that nobody goes below those standards. So we don't expect to see any increased cost in terms of the affordable housing per unit. We do have a couple of projects that are being built right now, and they seem to be right in line with, the developers have been able to do them. Those are projects without public money that still have to meet the environmental standards, and they seem to be doing just fine.
Thank you.
Further questions for the Honorable Mr. Strimling? I have a quick one, which is that in Portland, is there a similar percentage of set rate housing and market rate housing?
Yeah, what we do in the city of Portland is we said that any new development of housing would have to be 25% affordable at 80%. So yours is actually even a little more aggressive in terms of the affordability standard, which is great. We had affordability standards in place before that were 100 and 120%. And that really just, somebody at 100 or 120% down here is making $80,000 to $100,000 a year. So just simply not affordable. So we brought that down to 80.
Thank you. Representative Bradstreet, I see your hand is still raised.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. Thank you very much for being here. Please do leave the chocolate covered almonds for us. We appreciate that.
You bet. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next, we have Gina Moran, followed by Grant Provost, followed by Hansbrough. Ms. Moran, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Senator Hickman, Representative Sylvester, and honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Labor and Housing. My name is Gina Moran. I am a resident of Auburn, and I am here to testify in favor of LD 1656. We have three interconnected problems that hurt everyone in Maine: housing shortage, labor crisis, and a climate change crisis. We have a unique opportunity to take advantage of federal funds for affordable housing. This bill will address all three in one bill. I have grandchildren who don't deserve to inherit a climate crisis when we can start fighting it today. If we wait for future generations, it'll be too late. We also need a skilled workforce with good paying jobs and benefits to incentivize younger generations to stay here in Maine. This will also grow Maine's economy. In 2016, I was forced out of my home, and I lived in my car for 10 days. I struggled to eat and stay warm. I had to go to my storage unit just to heat water for ramen noodles. I used a quarter of a tank of gas just to try to keep warm at night. After that, I rented a motel room where I lived for the next 4.5 years. Living in a motel room isn't a picnic, and it's much easier than living in a car. I was one of the lucky ones who had a car to live in, because most homeless people don't. When the pandemic started, I was connected with a mutual aid group called Mainers Together. It was nothing but dumb luck that a fellow volunteer had an apartment for rent, and I told her I was interested in renting it. I felt I was the one who benefited the most because I had lost all hope of finding a real home. 2 months after I moved into my apartment has changed my life. I'm actually living again, not just surviving, and I'm so grateful. People like me should not be living in motels. We need affordable, safe housing. Please join me in supporting LD 1656 so people like me can start living again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Moran, for being here this morning and giving us your testimony.
Thank you.
Are there questions from the committee for Ms. Moran? No. Again, I thank you very much for being here this morning with us.
Thanks.
Next, we will hear from Grant Provost.
Wow. Thank you, Gina. That was something. Good morning, Senator Hickman, Representative Sylvester, and esteemed members of the Labor and Housing Committee. My name is Grant Provost. I'm the business agent for Ironworkers Local 7. I am a member of the AFL-CIO Executive Board, and I sit on 3 Maine State Workforce Boards: the Maine State Construction Board, the Central Maine and Western Maine Workforce Board, and the Maine State Workforce Board. I'm a member of the Maine State Building and Construction Trades Council and chair the Council's Committee on Offshore Wind. I rise in favor of LD 1656, an act to promote energy efficient, affordable housing. From a standpoint of someone in the construction trades, the building of affordable workplace housing should also be used as a vehicle that leads ones who build it to a place where home ownership is a possibility. Without rules governing how our tax dollars are spent on affordable housing, the cycle of generational wealth from home ownership never begins. When large-scale affordable housing projects are built with project labor agreements, the Mainers on those construction sites are guaranteed to have good-paying jobs that lead them to careers in the trades. Careers where construction workers are paid a living wage, have jobs that include health insurance, and can rest easy knowing that after a long career, they can enjoy the fruits of their labor in retirement. PLAs do not exclude any construction company from bidding on any project. A PLA does create a level playing field where employees are treated and paid fairly, creating an atmosphere where companies that pay well, have fringe benefits, and treat their employees well can not only succeed, but strive is good for all of us in Maine, union or not. When PLAs are implemented on projects, we say yes to apprenticeship programs and the next generation of tradesmen and women right here in Maine. This bill not only sets the bar for the construction site, it commits those who build affordable housing in Maine to building green. It creates a vessel where the affordable housing we put on this planet is more in harmony with the environment we live in, encouraging, empowering careers in the trades while protecting the beautiful state of Maine is a no-brainer and something we can all get behind. As we push forward on this bill and others, we unite in the collective fight handed down to us by generations of Mainers. The idea that we are here to protect this world's beauties and to make it a better place for those yet to come. With LD 1656, it's important to take note of the supporters, important to look at who's coming together to champion this needed legislation. When you do, you find a coalition containing environmental groups, labor unions, public advocacy groups, affordable home developers, construction companies, and legislators. That is a diverse group of supporters united in the fight to create a safe, affordable housing, the fight to create good paying careers with benefits, and the fight to protect our environment. I strongly urge this committee to vote ought to pass on this welcome piece of legislation. And I will take any questions if there are.
Thank you very much, Mr. Provost. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, I thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
And Hans Bro, you are up next, and you will let me know if I've mispronounced your name.
I certainly will. I usually go by Hans, but you got the bro part, which I'm happy for. Thanks for allowing me to speak. Howdy, everyone. Good morning. Happy to join from my home office living room couch with my cat Lieutenant from Portland. I'm going to speak on this in a couple things, and the most relevant hats I wear on this is I'm a Maine licensed architect. I'm a certified passive house consultant, and I'm a lead green associate. And I do consulting on all sort of the green provisions in this bill, passive house, LEED Gold, and living building challenge, both here in Maine, including the only living building challenge project currently in Maine and throughout the United States as well. I also chair a nonprofit whose mission is committed to decreasing carbon emissions, dependency on fossil fuels, and the cost of winter heating in Maine. And it's just sort of a professional and personal mission of mine to shape a more equitable and resilient built environment. I'm also one of the co-authors of the Green New Deal in Portland on the sustainability pieces. So I'm speaking to encourage support for LD 1656. It does a lot of good things, but I'm really just talking about the sustainability portion. And as Rep. Mill said, it is really a win-win-win when it comes to those provisions. Obviously, it's great to address climate change and through all these certifications, but also gives us buildings that are more resilient to climate change. That means in 50 years in the future, as the climate changes, these buildings are still going to perform as they are. And that's a really important thing. Buildings will have a longer life than when they're constructed. People who live in buildings by the certification systems have healthier lives. The indoor air quality is much higher. Vulnerable populations who may be living in these buildings are at much higher risk from public health experts from poor indoor air quality. And these are pathways to guarantee that. One of the other benefits is while a single family house that goes for, say, passive house might cost 5% more, when you build up a multifamily building, any increase in cost, if there is any, it's a rounding error and you can't even attribute it. So, I mean, it's sort of a no-brainer in that sense. And as others have said, the main building codes that are coming around are getting much closer to achieving these building standards. So it's not a huge leap to go for a third-party certification standard. However, in terms of money and effort, however, by providing that, you've got sort of a guarantee to get a much better building because you've got a whole team of experts behind the development team to make sure that what is built really does perform as intended, which is energy efficient, carbon reduction, really durable construction. So it's a healthy building for a long period of time, operates as we intend. Means our utility costs are really low. It means whoever's operating the building, their operation in the building over time is, significantly reduced. So anyway, you can just call me Sustainability Bro. I'm happy to talk about all the technical aspects of high performance construction and look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Sustainability Bro. I see a question from Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Bro, for being here. I'm glad to hear you talk about durability and everything. Do you have an idea of the life expectancy of a building built to these standards that you proposed?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, obviously, it's very hard to know that. But I know for the design teams, as being part of a design team on a number of projects built to these standards, we think of them as at least 100-year buildings. I mean, hopefully they last longer, but that's the intent.
Thank you. Representative Geer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for being here, Mr. Bro. My question has to do with the total cost of ownership calculation when you are building one of these buildings that has higher energy efficiency. How much does those kind of costs decrease on a month-to-month basis?
Oh, well, every building's unique, obviously, because each building is a very unique situation. But I've seen easily, just projects I've witnessed firsthand, more than 4 times decrease in monthly costs. It's incredible. Anecdotally, say in an apartment, you could go from, I don't know, say if I live in an apartment, I'm paying $100 a month in heat or something on average, I could go to $5 or something like that because I'm really heating it with just the body heat and the activities happening in the apartment. So there's a huge multiple times of magnitude decrease typically in operation costs.
Can I have a follow on, Madam Chair?
Please proceed.
So that would be for the tenant, and then what about looking at the building owner and the overall cost? How are those impacted?
Yeah, it depends how the sort of the operational energy costs are spread. If the tenants are paying for the utilities, then they can benefit that as well. But say you're an operator, you have two 100-unit buildings side by side. One of them's $35,000 a month to pay for the energy costs, which say typical construction. Say a passive house could be $10,000 a month in that regard. So that's the sort of operational energy piece, but there are also the maintenance pieces, keeping the mechanical systems in good order. And one of the great things about the certification systems, they provide a high level of rigor in terms of providing building systems that are reliable, well-designed in the first place, are commissioned, which means there's someone who checks to make sure that it is operating as intended when the construction is finished, and actually over the course of the lifetime of the building in a lot of these at this point now, because that is a huge impact. So to be honest, most buildings that are built, they might work as intended day one. They rarely do, and they rarely continue to operate as intended and become wildly inefficient and unhealthy in their operation. So it's complicated, but I hope that gives a hint into what that would look like.
And just to clarify, so you're saying that because of the way these buildings are constructed, they are monitored on a regular basis. So you're assured that the standards that you started out with will continue?
Yeah. And while it's not in the 3 certification systems provided, it's not necessarily a rote requirement that there's like a monthly, I'm going to check on this. It's highly encouraged. Those who are doing it know that this is a critical piece to deliver these buildings well. And so that awareness is brought to the whole design team through the whole process. And I wouldn't be surprised in the future that some of these certification systems do require ongoing monitoring. I think the lead one and the Living Building Challenge one would include that.
Thank you.
And thank you for your last comment. That leads right into a question I thought that I might prevail upon you, which is, could you give us a little description and comparison between the Passive House, the LEEDs, and Living Building Challenge?
Sure, and I will. As you know, buildings are incredibly complicated. They used to build out of 100 building materials 100 years ago. Now we have 55,000 building materials today. So, but anyway, so Passive House I think is good. I think of LEED as good too, and I think as Living Building Challenge as sort of an aggressive one that is a good option. And I think it's important to know that having 3 different building standards makes it easier for a design team to evaluate the specifics on each one, see how they're applicable to their project. And so the specific differences, Passive House is I would say has the most bang for the buck. It tends to say, let's work on the things that get us the most return on our investment. And at least the North American Passive House standard, it's intended to be sort of cost optimized by region, like what's really possible. And that's how it sets the targets. And a lot of the investments on the exterior envelope of the building. So that's like continuous insulation, continuous air sealing, high performance, minimized mechanicals, solar orientation, really kind of basic things, but also providing a framework where you have the design team thinking about those things, and you have a third-party verifier that works with the design team to make sure that all of these things fall into place. LEED, it's been around for a long time. So I think depending on the design team, that might be something that it's easier for them to get to. And depending on the project specifics, it does have energy requirements. It does have indoor air requirements that Passive House also benefits from. And so it's a good system. I think in Maine, in the projects I've seen, Passive House tends to make the most sense to Mainers. because for everything you put into it, you can really trace where you get a benefit from it. From Living Building Challenge, that's a certainly more aspirational. It has more components to it than just energy efficiency, which include some less tangible quality of life pieces, like building design. Like a beautiful building is actually part of it, but it also has all the energy requirements, which it's actually, I believe the project needs to be net positive, and there are lots of different ways to get there. It also building needs to be what's called red list free. That means of the tens of thousands of things that could be in the building, the design team needs to know what every single one is, every single chemical, and know what the health implications are. And if there's an option to provide something that's healthy, that won't make the residents sick, they have to provide that. And if they can't find that, it needs to be justification why. So there's a bit more work on the design team side, but if it makes sense for a team, I could see that, being just as feasible as the other ones with the right mix of things. Does that help clarify those three for you?
Very much so. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time this morning. Next up, we have James Lyson, followed by Jason Shedrock, followed by John Levitt. Jason Lyson, the floor is yours.
It's actually Jim Lyson.
Jim, welcome.
That's okay. Thank you. Madam Chair, Representative Pebworth, and I don't see Senator Hickman or Representative Sylvester, who were here earlier, but and honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Labor and Housing. My name is Jim Lyson. I'm from Lewiston, a former two-term city councilor. I'm here today to testify in favor of LD 1656. The bill addresses three important crises, and this has been mentioned, but I think it bears mentioning. The housing shortage crisis, estimated to be over 20,000 units, a unique labor crisis that means that the state has both too few jobs and not enough qualified people to fill them, and the climate change crisis as well. It uses an investment in energy efficient, affordable housing as a creative way to address all three of these crises together. Our housing is a major driver of greenhouse gas emissions, accounting for nearly 20%, as Representative Millett said, of Maine's carbon dioxide emissions. To address this housing will also meet high energy efficiency standards, which will be a major move forward addressing the climate change crisis. And that too has a great impact on Maine's labor force issues. The sustainable building is a major growth industry, and this funding will create more good construction jobs in Maine and grow the scale of green building and streamline critical supply chains. Energy efficiency will also save landlords and thus tenants money on their energy bills. By addressing these three crises together, LD 1656 will have significant economic multiplier effects. Each dollar invested in affordable housing boosts local economies by leveraging public and private resources to generate income, including resident earnings and additional local tax revenue, and supports good paying job creation and retention. As a former city councilor, I know firsthand how increased resident earnings and additional local tax revenue are necessary for our communities to thrive. Another benefit of adding safe, decent, and affordable energy efficient housing is the effect it has on the health of the people in those units. And Representative Millett pointed this out as well. I spent the last dozen years of my professional career as executive director of a federally qualified health center and witnessed how good housing can help people be more healthy and make children more ready to learn in school. Two critical things. Finally, adding 20,000 units would greatly reduce the problem of people being unhoused in Maine, which is particularly acute in Lewiston. This includes a high percentage of veterans who struggle with the many issues that stable housing could help resolve. Thank you, and please support and ought to pass on this, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Lyson. Are there questions from the committee? Representative Geer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks for being here, Mr. Lyson. And I'm curious, from your perspective as a former city councilor, I'm talking a lot to our municipal officials and really understanding it's such a circular bind. All these things are tied together so closely. Do you really see this bill as a way to kind of break a logjam in terms of getting the funding out there and starting to build the housing, and that being key to solving the puzzle?
Absolutely. I think that investment, I mean, we have some of the worst substandard housing completely. And you heard from Craig Saddlemeyer, who's one of our great developers here within this community at the RAISOP. Yeah, I mean, I think that this combines, both the need for housing, but also doing it in an energy efficient way, in a green way. I happen to be able to afford to go totally solar at my house. And so I know what the benefits are of having energy efficient housing. And obviously that was an investment I had to make, but my utility bills have shrunken to about $13 a month. And that's a big savings. And I anticipate that my whole investment will be paid off in about 9 years. So this type of investment, which talks about both providing it's just meeting so many crises at the same time. That's what's so beautiful about it. And, to get kickstarted, I think there's federal monies that we can throw into these projects as well, because it meets so many objectives that have been thrown out by our administration here in the federal government. And I think locally we're situated in a situation where we have many homeless people in Lewiston. They can't find safe, decent, affordable housing, and to have it energy efficient, that's just beautiful. And again, help manage the climate crisis, which is affecting us all. We may want to be like ostriches and stick our head in the ground and not think about it, but it is sooner than later it's coming. So thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions for Mr. Lyson this morning? No, thank you much for being here, giving testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity.
At this time, I'd like to ask the co-sponsor of the bill, Representative Grahowski, to give her testimony, and then we will go back with the others that I mentioned before.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for the allowance as I was testifying and on the hot seat in Environment and Natural Resources for quite a while this morning. So my apologies if I repeat any information that you've already heard, as I am newly joining this hearing this morning. Good morning to all members of the Committee on Labor and Housing. I am Nicole Grahowski, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today in support of LD 1656. I represent the communities of Ellsworth and Trenton in the Maine House. This bill takes an important step to address 3 pressing issues in Maine, as was just said: our severe lack of affordable housing, the need for good paying jobs and workforce development, and greenhouse gas emissions. It is inspiring to me to see one initiative tackle 3 of the topics that I hear the most about from constituents. Affordable housing development is constrained by 3 major factors: the lack of funding, the lack of development capacity, and the local permitting process. LD 1656 addresses the first 2 challenges by providing necessary funding to support new development and growing our capacity to develop more housing. Developing affordable housing is a complex process that requires navigating multiple federal, state, and local funding avenues, as well as raising capital. The funding proposed in this bill would work flexibly to leverage existing financial support, promote higher building standards, and ensure long-term affordability of the housing. Maine has chronically low wage rates for the construction trades compared with other states in New England. In Maine, a skilled laborer's prevailing wage is $19 per hour, less than the $20.43 per hour median wage needed to afford a median cost 2-bedroom rent. These low wages make it hard to attract new people to grow a strong workforce and meet the demand for new green building skills. Requiring project labor agreements on the affordable housing projects funded by LD 1656 would raise the wages and benefits in the green building sector, thus attracting new people to this industry and increasing participation in registered apprenticeships, resulting in a skilled 21st century workforce. Maine's residential sector accounts for 19% of our greenhouse gas emissions, almost as much as our commercial and industrial sectors combined at 20%. New housing stock provides a good opportunity to get it right from the start, minimizing emissions and saving residents money from day one compared to older, inefficient units. It is much cheaper to properly weatherize a building during the construction phase rather than renovating it years later. Maine already relies on a good building energy code and will adopt the 2015 International Energy Conservation Code this July. However, municipalities of fewer than 4,000 residents are not required to enforce our uniform building code, which can put low-income residents in rural areas at a greater financial disadvantage as they spend more on heating and cooling. We must ensure that the housing that Maine invests in, regardless of location, meets and exceeds these standards to help keep monthly bills down and reduce residential emissions. This bill provides 3 well-known and accepted construction standards, which I won't go through because you just heard more about than I would ever know. But by raising the efficiency standards to one of these 3 options, we will create demand to grow our skilled workforce in what is a burgeoning sector. I would like to leave the committee with a few suggestions to consider as you discuss this bill. Section 1, subsection 6, and this is all written in my testimony, requires a certain amount of renewable energy generation to be located on site or nearby. That amount is related to the building's roof area. It would be more appropriate to use the term electricity instead of energy, since I think the goal is probably not to generate renewable natural gas, for example. And I also would note that both the location and scale of renewable generation are important to its value to our grid operations and the economics of a project. The term nearby is quite vague, and it could result in using a location that provides no actual benefit in matching the new electricity load generated by the housing facility. We have many other programs that we work on in my committee, the Energy Committee, designed to add renewable generation to our grid affordably. So instead of the current language, I would recommend that the affordable housing developer install photovoltaic arrays on all feasible building roof areas. This would encourage better site orientation of the building for new construction, guarantee that the electricity is generated right where it is used, and then a net metering agreement can evenly distribute those bill credits amongst all units in the building so that residents can benefit from the lower electricity bills. And if it would be helpful, I'd be happy to ask a representative from the governor's energy office or a solar developer to advise the committee on this recommendation. And additionally, I have observed in my region that many affordable housing developments do not include adequate green space and trees to support the physical and emotional well-being of residents. Research now indicates that higher levels of green vegetation around homes, schools, and workplaces are associated with decreased mortality, and that neighborhood greenery decreases aggressive behavior in adolescents. Some communities have ordinances that require these features, but many do not. So I would recommend adding a requirement similar to the energy production requirement that would provide for minimum green space for housing developments that are created through new construction. This might be less feasible for renovation or redevelopment, so we want to be thoughtful about that. And I have asked the Maine Association of Planners if they can provide some more specific feedback on this topic to your committee before the work session. So thank you all for listening attentively to my testimony in support of LD 1656 and some recommendations for improvement. I'd be happy to answer any questions and really appreciate you sneaking me in when I showed up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Brahowski. Representative Bradstreet has a question for you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair Pro Tem, and thank you, Senator, for being here. I think you mentioned something about, the need for housing in different parts of the state, rural as well as urban areas, or something to that effect. Does the requirement that they be geographically proximate to public transportation hubs and routes, is that an issue we should take a close look at?
I think that's a really great question, Representative Bradstreet. My recollection in the bill is that that is in the section that sort of determines how the projects would be assessed against each other. So it's not so much a requirement as a characteristic to look at when prioritizing. And I hope that that would be applied in locations where it was relevant. So if you're going to be developing in Lewiston, for example, how much closer is it to a transportation system? If you're looking to develop in Lubec, we wouldn't penalize you for the fact that you're not going to be anywhere near a transportation system, because that's not really a relevant factor. So I think the way the bill is written, it's fairly permissive on that standard, but I think that's a great point that hopefully would only be applied where it made sense.
Very good. Thank you.
Representative Prescott has a question as well.
Well, thank you. You had mentioned $19, $20 an hour is a necessity to support living.
Yes, to afford the median rent for a 2-bedroom apartment.
Okay, my question is, for about 2 years, all we heard from the media, politicians, and commercials was that Maine needed to implement a living wage, which was $15 an hour. So how do we get from just last year saying this would be enough money for people to support themselves to now where I'm hearing that it's not enough money?
Well, I can't speak to the source of what was put on advertisements. I'd have to really see where that information came from. I can say that we've seen the housing market skyrocket during COVID. What was affordable 2 years ago is frankly not the same cost anymore. So these numbers do change based on our economies. I would say around here, we have so many jobs available to folks and not enough people to do them. Quite frankly, the minimum wage is being determined by Jackson Lab because of the amount of money that they are willing to pay new employees. So what government saying what a minimum wage is not even relevant where I live. And we're finding that the wage needs to be much higher than 15 to afford to live in Ellsworth, for instance, and to even get somebody to work for you. So there's a lot of factors, and this is the Labor and Housing Committee, so I probably shouldn't say anything else because you are all more knowledgeable on this than I am.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And Chair, I have another question. Would you like me to wait or continue?
No, you may proceed.
Oh, well, thank you. You mentioned uniform building codes, and I understand the part about 4,000 people or less in a municipality. You'd like to extend that. So we're back to the same question I had earlier, where there's now a push for small houses, but they do not want to comply with any kind of safety codes as it is. If we bring small housing into the state of Maine, do you believe that they should also have to comply with the uniform building codes?
That would be beyond my expertise to speak to that. I'm not a tiny house developer, I'm sorry to say. That would be a fun career in addition to the legislature, I'm sure.
Yeah, right. All right, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Representative Drinkwater.
Yes, just a quick question. Does Ellsworth have a public bus system?
We do have a transportation system for this region. It is not what you would think of for Portland or Lewiston or Bangor, for instance, though there are fewer rides, but it does connect, certain areas to shopping, to medical care and things like that. So there is a system. It's not as frequent during the days in a more urban area.
Oh, so you would have to call and arrange for somebody to pick you up, or the bus runs every hour?
The bus runs regularly, but not frequently.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions for Representative Grahowski? Seeing none, thank you very much for presenting this morning.
Thank you all.
And thank you for your patience, Jason Shedlock and John Levitt. We will now go to Jason Shedlock. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Senators, Representatives, and Chair Pepworth, members of the Committee on Labor Housing. My name is Jason J. Shedlock. I'm a regional organizer for the Laborers International Union of North America. I'm also a trustee and executive board member of both the Maine AFL-CIO and Southern Maine Labor Council, and a resident of South Portland. I also serve on the Maine Apprenticeship Council as well as the State Workforce Board. I appear before you in support of LD 1656, an act to promote energy efficient and affordable housing. My local union is over 300 strong in Maine, with access to 1,000 more skilled professionals across New England. The Laborers International Union wholeheartedly supports this bill because we must not force our skilled craftspeople to build the very affordable housing that they will need to then turn around and live in because of depressed wages and lack of skill and lack of labor standards. We support LD 1656's $100 million investment because it not only is necessary to address the widening affordable housing gap, but because it also speaks to the sustainability of our workforce and our environment. The bill sets labor standards through the use of project labor agreements, or PLAs. Make no mistake, by voting ought to pass on LD 1656, this committee will be sending a clear message that when we spend public dollars on affordable housing in this state, the women and men who build it will no longer be an afterthought. Through PLAs, by partnering with building trades unions such as the laborers, we ensure that workers are paid fairly, trained well, earn health care benefits, and after an honest career, have an even shot at retiring with dignity. PLAs incorporate registered apprenticeship programs so that we are training Maine's future builders. They also can include targets for traditionally underserved populations such as women and people of color. There are also programs for returning veterans. PLAs are crafted in partnership with contractors and labor organizations to fit the needs of the specific project and the specific community. PLAs are pre-job agreements that set the standards, expectations, and rules for a specific project and for that project only. To be clear, any contractor, union or non, can bid, win, and perform a project under a PLA. This is a fact no matter who says otherwise and how it's spun. True, any contractors and all contractors must agree to treat the workers on that project fairly and play by the pre-established rules. But in fairness, that really should not be a lot to ask. And if a specific contractor, association, or even a developer protests against labor standards, one must ask the question, why? Why should we not get to yes when it comes to empowering our workers, given that we are injecting $100 million of taxpayer money into affordable housing, and in turn, these workers are injecting part of their paychecks into our local economies? We can no longer accept no as a strategy to address issues of inequity. This bill gets to yes by addressing three major issues in Maine: our affordable housing shortage, our climate crisis, and our skilled workforce shortage. The Laborers Union stands ready to address Maine's needs when it comes to build the future and doing so in a sustainable way. LD 1656 goes a long way in setting the rules of the game on workforce standards while addressing the key needs of affordable housing and environmental stewardship. I urge you to vote ought to pass, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shedlock. Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Shedlock. You know, as we've talked about earlier in this hearing, and I'm sure you've heard a lot about PLAs, and we've had a lot of discussion about that, even very strong objections to them by different companies, even some employee-owned companies. So do you think that absent a PLA, those different attributes that you just talked about, safety training and all that, would be absent?
Are you finished with your question, Representative? I didn't want to. You are.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So, you know, you can't guarantee them. I mean, that the part of the problem here is that if we want to, if the state wants to put forward our values and want to codify our values, if we're going to be injecting this type of money into our affordable housing structure through a project labor agreement, through these pre-construction agreements, you codify these things. And if we want to put forward our values, you put them in place, whether it's registered apprenticeship, whether it's fair wages, safety standards, putting benchmarks in for hiring traditionally underserved populations. We can say we want to do them, or we can actually put it on paper and sign an agreement ahead of time. People have the best intentions, but when you sign your name to a contract and to a paper, you codify in that a law, into the law or into an agreement, and then you're held accountable for it. And that's what we're saying here. Basically, put your signature on the paper and deliver.
Thank you very much. Other questions for Mr. Shedlock? Seeing none, Representative Gear.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do appreciate you being here, Mr. Shedlock, and yet again addressing the issue of PLAs, which I continue to want to make sure that we clarify and state very clearly for anyone listening that any company, unionized or non-unionized, can bid on a project that has a PLA and sign the PLA. Is that correct?
That's 100% correct. It happens all the time across the country. It's happened in Maine before, and we continue to urge anyone to bid. They can work under a PLA, sign the agreement. Doesn't make them poof a union contractor from here till eternity. Be happy to work with them for here till eternity if they want to. But after the contract is over, we can shake hands and go forth our separate ways. But in that particular time frame, they have to play by the rules of the game for that particular contract, and we move on. So anyone can work under a project labor agreement. That's the legal rules.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
I see John Levitt is ready to go. You have the floor, sir.
Hey, good morning, and thank you for your time. My name is John Levitt. I represent the Carpenters Union in Maine, in Northern New England. I submitted testimony in support of LD 1656, but I would like to claim my seat, so to speak. I won't take up much of your time. I know I don't want to reiterate what everyone else has said, but LD 1656 will provide responsible growth for workforce development and housing by offering people a career and a home. You can learn the full scope of a selected trade, not a simple task on a specific phase of work or one particular project, while building energy efficient homes and affordable housing. We can develop and keep a needed workforce in the state who stay in the state and pay taxes in the state. In construction, we're seeing more and more labor brokers supplying workers with minimal skills who do substandard work then leave the state. This bill will allow us to engage a workforce who can perform at a level of pay that meets the production needed for the contract to remain successful and grow their workforce locally. This will limit the need for independent contractors and labor brokers and allow the state to collect the state and federal taxes for those workers and eliminate the ongoing tax fraud that we're facing in our industry, in the construction industry. I urge you to support LD 1656 so contractors and tradespeople will be able to hire employees and train them and grow in the state and remain successful here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions for Mr. Levitt? Seeing none, thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Patty Kidder, followed by Peter McLaughlin and Naomi Beal. Ms. Kidder, you have the floor.
Thank you. Senator Hickman and Representative Pebworth and honorable members of the Labor and Housing Committee. My name is Patty Kidder, and I'm a resident of Springvale, part of the city of Sanford. I'm here to testify today on favor of 1656, an act to build energy efficient, affordable housing. I'm here today to tell you that housing insecurity is a real problem in Maine. Last year, when the pandemic first started, Maine People's Alliance started MainersTogether.com, which paired volunteers with people in need. I was the volunteer coordinator for the greater Sanford area. Some of the people I helped were on the brink of eviction. Once you have an eviction on your record, it is very hard to get another apartment. These people were low income and would qualify for a Section 8 voucher, except their apartments won't pass inspection and the landlords won't follow the rules to accept the vouchers. These people need energy efficient, affordable housing. I started trying to help a homeless couple get an affordable apartment. They'd been staying at a friend's spare bedroom until the pandemic started, and then the friend made them leave. They had no place to go but into the woods around town and set up camp. I brought them food and gave them my extra camping supplies. I discovered they were not alone. There were several tent cities in different wooded areas. At one point, they found an apartment and we found help for the security deposit through my church, and then it all fell apart. The apartment didn't pass inspection and they were homeless again. When the people I was trying to help would get a Section 8 voucher, you had a very limited time in which to find an apartment that would pass inspection and a landlord who would accept the people as tenants. There were application forms to fill out and fees to scrape together. And then by then, someone else with ready cash and great references had already signed the lease. There just isn't enough affordable housing for low-income people in my community. Some people I've been helping pay rent that is more than 60% of their income. They cannot keep up with other living expenses. All people need an affordable, safe place to live before they can work at putting their lives back together. Housing first, it works. Please vote LD 1656 ought to pass. Our low-income neighbors need more affordable, energy-efficient places to live, and our state needs the good-paying jobs this bill will provide. Honorable members of Labor and Housing Committee, I thank you for your time. I'll take any questions if you have them.
Thank you so much for being with us again this morning. Are there questions for Ms. Kidder? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next, we'll hear from Peter McLaughlin. If you want to turn your video on and unmute, and you have the floor.
Thank you, and thank you to the Labor and Housing Committee for letting me speak today. My name is Peter McLaughlin. I've been a resident of Portland, Maine for more than a decade. I'm 33 years old. I'm a graduate of Bowdoin College. I work multiple jobs, well over full time, and I have for most of my adult life. And I have never made over 50% of the local AMI here in Portland. I'm thrilled to see this committee taking up this act to promote energy efficient, affordable housing. Many know that here in Portland, we instituted a similar ordinance by referendum back in November that former Mayor Strimling spoke to earlier. I was a supporter of and a volunteer for that campaign. Many have spoke this morning to the great benefits and careful design of LD 1656, as well as the extreme needs for this sort of legislation in Maine today. So I'd like to speak from a slightly different angle. Here in Portland, we saw some strong opposition to our referendum from the development and real estate community writ large, as well as some of their allies in our own city government. The claim was made over and over that the market simply could not bear these sort of green initiatives, that the added costs would eat too far into the profits of developers, and that these developers would simply leave town. Some members of the statewide developer community are likely making these same arguments now about 1656. While we've only lived 6 months with the Portland ordinance, some things are already clear. Back during the campaign in 2020, city councilors and local developers pointed to specific projects that would not go through if this referendum were to pass. At public city council meetings and in the most well-funded opposition campaign Portland has ever seen, they said this again and again. These specific affordable housing projects were dead in the water. Well, as we know, the referendum passed by a margin of over 8,000 votes in our city of 66,000. And then what happened? The councilors and developers who had been for months fear-mongering about all the needed development in Portland coming to a halt, they got quiet, real quiet. And what else? The projects went through. These specific, these exact affordable housing projects that had been pointed to, supposedly dead in the water, they're all going through the planning board and city council processes right now with no issue at all. This affordable housing will be built, and these projects are in good company. Despite this supposedly burdensome referendum and new measures, the projects continue to come. Some of the largest development projects that the city of Portland has ever seen. They're not going to Westbrook or South Portland or Biddeford, and they're certainly not leaving the state. The margins are still very good, and everyone wants to build. Projects of all types too. I'll end with something I think we can all agree upon. Maine is a heck of a desirable place to be. It's a desirable place to live, work, and run any kind of business, big or small. For those that want to do business here and those that want to reap the great financial benefit from that business, I think in many cases we can afford to ask a bit more. And as far as the other issues are concerned, that many have spoken to beautifully, the health of our environment, the future of our planet, not to mention the needs of workers and the needs for affordable housing, well, we simply cannot afford to not ask a bit more. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions for Mr. McLaughlin? Seeing none, thank you for being with us this morning. Naomi Beal, you may have the floor.
Good morning, and thank you. The Committee of Labor and Housing and Representative Pebworth. I'm Naomi Beal. I'm a resident of Freeport, and I'm here today to testify in favor of LD 1656. As the founding member and current ED of Passive House Maine, and as an observer and key player in promoting Passive House in Maine over the last decade, I want to voice support for LD 1656. The need for more affordable housing is well documented. We've heard from a lot of fantastic speakers this morning, and it's well understood. I don't think there's much debate there. There seems to be no question at this point that we in Maine will be building exponentially more in the coming years. The urgency for building bumps up directly against the urgency in reaching our carbon goals as set up by the governor and reinforced by other state, federal, and global leaders. As Maine looks at our new building standards, including the previously referenced 2015, the IECC 2015, and the newly approved stretch code, we see a gap between the energy consumption and the incumbent carbon that's required in that stretch code and what's required in passive house or passive buildings. The Maine Climate Council and Maine Housing have been given data demonstrating the pronounced energy and carbon reduction in building operations with increased air tightness. And air tightness is sort of a definitive factor, difference in passive house versus a stretch code. Air tightness coupled with mechanical ventilation is sort of the crux of passive house in these larger multifamily low-income houses. When these significant incremental differences are spread out across the suggested hundreds and thousands of new units that we need to build, it has bearing on how we reach our carbon goals. In addition, Maine has approximately 450,000 existing structures that need our attention. Constructing new buildings to the lowest energy and carbon creates room to address the existing buildings, a critical piece of our climate action plan, and that meets the Maine won't wait imperative. Creating a building stock of affordable housing at passive house level creates equity of housing options, creating healthy homes, and low and predictable utility costs, and importantly, resilient structures in this era of extreme weather. Further, it pushes the commercial and market rate housing in a similar path. This bill also addresses the training required for trades workers, which is a second imperative. Again, with the urgency inherent in the Maine won't wait message, I encourage the committee to pass LD 1656. Happy to take questions too. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there questions for Ms. Beal? Seeing none, we appreciate you being here this morning.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Robert Burr, followed by Roger Burnell, followed by Rosanna Patain. We'll find out more about that when she's up in the queue. Robert Burr, the floor is yours.
Madam Chair, good morning. Thank you. Good morning, Senator Hickman, Representative Sylvester, and distinguished members of the Committee on Labor and Housing. My name is Robert Burr. I reside in Scarborough, Maine. I am testifying on behalf of International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 4, in strong support of LD 1656, an act to build energy efficient, affordable housing. Across New England, more than 5,000 members of YUOE Local 4 are building communities, promoting safe workplaces, taking advantage of the state-of-the-art training, and advocating for economic opportunity for all. Operating Engineers Local 4 has a strong, long history of delivering world-class results. For over 120 years, we've been setting the standard for high-quality construction throughout Eastern Massachusetts, Eastern New Hampshire, and Maine. Whether you need heavy equipment operators, mechanics, surveyors, equipment house employees, or wastewater users, you can count on us to get the job done right, on time, and within budget. Our excellence starts with apprenticeship and training opportunities we provide at our facilities. Members receive training, licenses, and certifications needed to upgrade existing skills and acquire new ones throughout their careers. We focus on OSHA, HAZMAT, NCCO, forklift, and continuing education programs. And in working with our partners, we are ensuring industry-leading wages and benefits for all. I urge this committee to champion what the Biden administration is advocating for, union jobs. With labor standards applied to this federal money coming to Maine, workers should be getting industry-leading wages. The organizations that will be testifying against this legislation will claim the open shop contractor employees will not be permitted to work on a project that has a PLA attached to it. This simply is not true. I've been in these committees testifying in support of labor standards for too long. Some of our main contractors have for decades kept unions out by establishing ESOPs and suppressing the wages. It's worked. For example, prevailing wage for an excavator operator in my trade in our neighboring state of Massachusetts is a base wage of $48.73, healthcare of $12.50, and a pension of $15.70. The total package is $76.93. While in York County, Maine, the same job classification is $23 and a fringe of 77 cents. If you wonder why there's a shortage of workers, there's your answer. I ask this committee to vote in favor of LD 1656, and I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Burr. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
I will again ask the indulgence of folks whose names I have just called. I'm going to ask Representative Collings to give his testimony. As you know, representatives and senators are busy jumping from meeting to meeting, committee meeting to meeting this time of year, and it's helpful when we can put them in when we're able. Representative Collings, the floor is yours.
Oh, good morning. Representative Pebworth and distinguished members of the Labor and Housing Committee. I'm Representative Benjamin Collings. My House district is number 42. It's part of the city of Portland. Thank you for letting me jump in here. I was stuck in between two committees on two different screens, and I'm trying to get my brain back in here to think straight. LD 1656, I'll just very plainly say I think it's a great idea, especially, you know, if we're getting more federal money, that if we are investing in housing, that we do it in an energy efficient manner. I think it will be over time a good investment, and why not invest in a manner that saves money over time and is good for our environment. And I'm also strongly in favor of all the other details in the bill that would promote responsible contracting and give jobs to local people, look at diversity. I think once we have federal or state money used for projects, we should set an example and be accountable with those tax dollars and spend that money in a way that promotes the greater good of our state. So for those reasons, I'm highly supportive of this bill. And thank you very much for allowing me to jump in to testify.
Certainly, Representative Collings. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Roger Burnell, if you want to show your video and unmute, the floor is yours.
There we go. Good morning, and thank you very much for allowing me the time to testify. Honorable members of the committee, my name is Roger Burnell. I'm the political director and president of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. We cover a jurisdiction, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. I spent 22 years in the field before going in the office to take over this position. And I worked under several project labor agreements in other states. I don't know how much more I can add to my my brothers in the labor movement that have previously testified, but I do want to thank Rep. Millette for laying out very thoughtfully the intent of this bill. One thing I do want to mention is when it comes to housing, there in other areas of my jurisdiction, we've run into areas where these housing projects are being developed, and we find that these areas are rife with wage theft. because certain developers are using contractors that skirt the payroll certifications, and using a PLA tends to weed those contractors out. It is absolutely true that any contractor can bid on these projects, whether they be signatory or non-signatory, or for the layman would be union or non-union. All they have to do is adhere to the specific criteria that is laid out when the PLA is negotiated. One of the things about my union is that we are a majority minority union, with 55% of my members being women or people of color. And using signatory companies that have engaged in a collective bargaining agreement with my labor organization instills that you will have racial justice and you will have pay equity, no matter what member that is being employed or being utilized on that job site. The final point I want to make is when you're engaging with a union contractor to perform work on these sites, you are basically getting a free apprenticeship program for your state. My members can contribute into our own apprenticeship program to train and maintain our workforce out of their own pockets. So engaging in this project with a PLA, thank you, Rep. Engaging in this process with a PLA would ensure that the state of Maine would be having a free apprenticeship training program to make sure that the workers of the future are being trained here for the betterment of your state. Thank you very much, and I'll take any questions if there are any.
Thank you so much for your testimony this morning. Are there questions from the committee? Representative Rader.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I was just wondering, you mentioned pay equity, and I know unions are closing the pay gap. Have you achieved full pay equity with your contracts?
Yes, it does not matter if you are a man or a woman. You are paid the same no matter what. We negotiate a collective bargaining agreement for all workers. There are apprenticeship rates. Obviously, as you work your way up through the ranks to a journey person status, which is the full rate, that's when you achieve it. But it does not matter if you are a man or a woman. As soon as you sign a contract with my organization, you are paid the same no matter what.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Mr. Brunel? Representative Drinkwater.
Just to hit upon the equity thing.
Yes, sir.
If I was in education for 2 years, if a female teacher has 10 years worth of experience versus a male that has 5 years worth of experience, she's going to make more money. Is it that way in the trades unions also?
No, there's no seniority, sir. No matter who you are paid equally, men or women. You are trained the same. You are allowed the same benefits. There is no difference. We treat every member as an individual, regardless.
Well, so does education, but they recognize experience and they pay more for the experience. So thank you.
The experience you speak of would be the only classification we would have would be our apprenticeship programs. When you sign a contract with us, if you have no skills, you start as a 50% apprentice, and as that member works their way up, every 750 hours that they have worked on the job site, they get a pay increase, a step increase in their pay. We also have every 6 months, we have contractual increases that go up for all members. But for an apprentice, every 750 hours that person is on the job site, they will get a pay increase for their experience. It goes in levels of 750 hours. They go from a 50% apprentice to a 55% apprentice. And then it starts to move incrementally faster. Our total apprenticeship program for a person to go from 50% apprentice to a full-fledged journey person takes about 3 years. It's 3 years worth of training, but if they are working full-time, they can usually reach their 6,000 hours within those 3 years and have full journey person status as far as pay.
Thank you very much. Further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Rosanna Patain, help me out.
Yes, Patain. Yes. Good morning.
Good morning. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm calling in today in support of the bill. Thank you very much to everyone on the Labor and Housing Committee. I'm a member of a co-housing community. We're forming a co-housing build, and we've been working at it for a few years. And I was so happy to see this bill because we're keenly aware of the need for affordable housing and also energy efficient housing. Our project is planned to be addressing both of those needs, both affordable housing and energy efficient housing. We're planning a passive house standard for building. However, I have a couple of concerns with the bill that I wanted to raise and a couple of suggestions. Our project is designed to include a variety of homes and a variety of incomes. A third to a half of the development is planned to be identified for income restricted households. So we're aiming for affordable prices up to 100% of AMI. And that's in recognition that a lot of our Mainers are struggling. Even when they are making the area median income, they cannot afford the median prices of the homes. So we're aiming for a diverse development, and the affordable units will be built to the exact same standards as the others would be, the market units. And the important thing to understand about co-housing is that we are self-governed. So this is a self-developed housing community, really a neighborhood. And as I read the bill, I'm concerned that this kind of innovative and diverse approach to the problem would not be included. So a few suggestions for you to consider in your workshop are to allow a mix of single family homes as well as multifamily homes. We will have all of those. Allow purchase as well as rental units, increase the eligibility and the prioritization to 100% of AMI, and recognize explicitly co-housing organizations that are resident owned and developed in the bill. And allow renewable energy of different kinds, not just solar, and allow solar to be derived from solar farms in Maine, not just on site. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to suggest that we hear now from a couple of people opposed to the legislation before us. I believe we have 2 people signed up to testify. We have a handful of folks who are in favor of the legislation still left to testify, and a few neither for nor against. So we will move with all speed and haste towards our lunchtime and caucusing prior to our work sessions this afternoon. I do see Representative Sylvester on the board, as well as Senator Hickman. Should anyone decide to return to the chair, just let me know. Matt Marks and Tim Walton. Let's see, Tim Walton, the floor is yours. Sometimes the wormhole does take a moment. Mr. Walton, we can see you. Well, we can see your name and picture. There you are. Floor is yours, sir.
Sorry about that. Representative Penworth, respected members of the Joint Standing Committee on Labor and Housing, my name is Tim Walton. I'm a resident of Livermore. And I'm supplying testimony today on behalf of multiple clients, Chimbro, the Maine Aggregate Association, Coots, and Ace Painting, in opposition to LD 1656. I'm not gonna, this testimony is pretty much the same as all the other PLA testimonies, bills that you have heard, so I'm not gonna go over too much. I guess I have a question, first of all, just maybe rhetorical, but why a PLA? I'm just curious. I've asked this question before. Are the agencies and departments in Maine asking for this? We haven't been told they are, and recently or in the past. So I guess that's a question. Maybe during questions, somebody can answer it for me. A PLA, we've heard a lot from the proponents this morning about PLA, and they all, I think a couple of them, Mr. Burr, Mr. Shedlock, maybe talked about that anybody can work on a PLA, that it doesn't block out, as we've claimed, it blocks out over 90% of the construction workers in Maine who choose not to belong to a union. Taxpayers, for the most part, I'm sure, that wouldn't get to work on taxpayer-funded projects with a PLA. This bill actually, most of the PLA bills we've seen haven't directly addressed this issue, but in this one, it does. It talks about, in section 1, item 1, about the award of a project, there'd have to be a pre-hire collectively bargaining project labor agreement with the workers who will build housing. And then it talks about with the developer, but also with the contractors and subcontractors. Those, I believe the two gentlemen were correct in that anybody can bid on it, and I believe they could be awarded it. But to perform the work, they'd have to sign an agreement with the unions in most cases with project labor agreements, where those workers would have to be unionized for the duration of the project. And I believe it was Mr. Burr that said they could, after the project's over, they could go on and go back to their open shop or non-union status, which they choose to have. So I'm guessing, I'm just like to know, when we're going to talk about that, because that becomes really problematic for both the contractor that they have to leave to go to the union halls and be hired out of there, and then going back to a project after that. I mean, these are nuances that I think people should really know before they promote the PLAs and all these bills. And again, I'll ask the question, hopefully somebody can answer it. Who's asking for these?
Excuse me, Mr. Walton?
Thank you.
Your time. Thank you. Do you have a concluding statement that you would like to make?
I do not. That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I see Representative Drinkwater with his hand up.
Thank you. Mr. Walton, is there anything else in this bill that you find troubling?
Well, no, I would like to say though, thank you for that. About the training. We've spoken on this before as well. Senator Millett graciously put in a bill a few years back to help increase training for mechanical trades, and it dealt with the CTEs around the state, the Career and Technical Education Centers. There's 27, I believe, in the state. Most of you have one in your district that services your district. And then there's community college program, there's on-the-job training and lifelong learning. Apprenticeship is clearly not the only method of training and should not be promoted as the only method. And certainly not unionized training. I mean, that's apprenticeship training. It's good training. We won't refute that. But to give people opportunities, I believe, as Senator Millett, Representative Millett mentioned, that's by putting a PLA on this and promoting the unionized apprenticeship training, that really is limiting that worker, that craft professional, if you will, from gaining experiences across the board, not just with craft training. So thank you for the Representative Drinkwater.
Thank you.
Amy Rader, Representative Rader, see your hand up.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being here, Mr. Walton. We heard from our last speaker about the closing of the wage gap with the PLAs. Do you have any information on pay equity amongst the companies that you represent?
I'm going to ask your next speaker to address that more. I've heard Matt Marks speak pretty well on that issue. He and I are colleagues in this world, and we share the same positions. I will say that the market, particularly this market, and I'll agree with my union counterparts on this, that the market is driving a lot of wages. They talked about different parts of the state. The pay parity issue, I'm probably not the best to talk about that, but I will say the market is driving the high wages, and that is an issue.
Thank you. I appreciate your
Thank you for
time.
the question, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Walton. Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Walton, for being here. You've heard some comments, I think, about a PLA will help to control costs, control pricing. In your experience, could you tell me anything about how a typical contract, everything else being equal, costs out under a PLA agreement and one without a PLA agreement?
Well, so thank you for that, Representative Bradstreet. So in Maine, with the lack of the PLAs, I mean, with over 90% of the workforce working open shop, there really has little to no PLA. So I don't really have anything to go by in Maine. But generally speaking, it's been my experience from a national level that project labor agreements do add cost. I'm not going to venture to say what that percentage is, because I think it's been a moving needle over the years. And certainly with prices of everything going skyrocket through COVID, I believe that number is it's kind of a moving number or a moving target, if you will. But generally speaking, it's been my experience, they do add cost.
Thank you for that. Any further questions for Mr. Walton? Seeing none, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
And Matthew Marks, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you, Representative Pepworth, distinguished members of the committee. I thank you for the time today to testify on this bill. My name is Matt Marks. I live in Scarborough, and I've been with the Associated General Contractors for about 12 years. Before that, I was with a site work contractor in Southern Maine. AGC Maine is part of a nationwide group of chapters. I think we have a little over 80 chapters here across the country. Maine has one single chapter. We have highway, building, construction, roads and bridges, all that stuff under one roof, including energy, utility, construction. We support the continued investment of housing to meet this growing demand. In fact, we've been partners with housing advocates for at least the last decade, probably back before my time, I imagine. We've supported everything from bonds to creative funding to try to find ways to really remedy what's happening in the housing market here in Maine, which I think in the last survey, and I wish I could cite who actually did the study, there were some 9,000 seniors, I think it was Apt Associates, 9,000 seniors who were waiting for good, clean, affordable housing throughout the state. I have both large and small members who actually work on housing projects. The majority of those folks, in fact, I went back and looked, are open shop contractors, at least on the GC level. I know there are several of my union contractors who work as subcontractors on these kinds of projects. We support the continued investment. I actually welcome the federal funding. I think it's be a big plus here for Maine to tackle our backlog of affordable housing. It's urgent for sure, not just for seniors, but for all Mainers. But I've cited this committee before. We struggle with the term project labor agreement that's contained within this bill. The majority of the folks that we represent in the housing market are not subject to a collective bargaining agreement. I believe that it will reduce the list of available firms that can actually tackle the projects, including subcontractors as well. But I'll leave you with that. I've answered a good deal of questions about project labor agreements. I'm happy to do that again here today and answer any other questions that you may have. I will tell you that the U.S. Government Accounting Office had done several studies about the economic benefits of a PLA. They struggled with results because it was hard to compare those who were subjected to a project labor agreement and those projects that were not. They're just not equal comparisons. So I'll leave you with that. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marks. Are there questions from the committee? Representative Drinkwater, followed by Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you, Mr. Marks. It's been hit upon about pay equity. We heard from a union representative that if you have 20 years of experience, you get paid the same as somebody with 1 year of experience. Can you enlighten me upon that in these open shops? Do they pay more if you have more experience?
Representative, I don't have any studies on that, so I'll keep my words to what I know. Obviously, there are firms that do pay based on the duration of time that you're with a company. They do have increases. There are others that may not. So many of these companies are individualized in Maine. You have those folks, like I know I mentioned before, that have employee stock option plans. Some have different type of retirement plans, but generally speaking, I can tell you there are quite a few firms that do have additional pay for the time duration that you're with a firm. They celebrate that. I see a lot of great news come across my email of folks who have done 25 or 30 or 40 years within a company. That's usually celebrated as a pretty distinct achievement. So I would share that it's common, but I just caution I don't have stats on it.
Well, I was just counting upon your experience. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Representative Bradstreet.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Walton asked the question, why PLAs? And I guess I'm asking, do you know of any major projects that have failed because of a lack of a PLA being in force?
No. I think if you look at the housing division in particular, because that's what this bill applies to, there are a group of select GCs that focus on this type of work. I would tell you that I think the Housing Authority has been pretty pleased with those projects. They're all can be challenging. You face a number of federal and state regulations that housing work has that are applied to these projects. And as you look at this policy, for example, when you start looking at things like adding new energy efficiencies, we support that. I think we may share some frustration over time where you may see that you have to come under a cost cap where the long-term benefit of adding some alternative renewable energy may not be possible under some of the cost caps. But generally speaking, hopefully to answer your question clearly, no, I haven't seen any problems since the time I've been with AGCMA. Thank
you.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions from the committee? No, with that, I will thank you very much for your time, Mr. Marks. And we will return to opponents of the bill. And let's start with Sean Donnelly, and then we will go to Russ Long, who I know is calling in on the phone, and I'm going to work with Alyssa to pull him in. Great. The floor.
Hello, Representative Pebworth and honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Labor and Housing. My name is Sean Donnelly, and I'm a resident of Arundel, here to testify today in favor of LD 1656. As many have noted, our state is facing two equally existential crises in filling our desperate need for affordable housing, while also eliminating our contribution to global climate change. This bill is a smart and innovative approach to both for a number of reasons. I'll limit my remarks to what I think may not have been already mentioned. In my profession as a digital illustrator, I've worked closely with architects and engineers for more than 2 decades, visualizing their designs through 3D computer modeling to communicate their ideas to the public. Our state is blessed to have many talented designers who want to design the smart homes of the future, but they are limited by what developers who may only be concerned with the greatest return on their own investment are willing to spend. Some aspects of green development may require a marginal increase in the planning process to optimize a building based on the specifics to the site. However, the future dividends this pays massively dwarfs any increase in upfront costs. And as with any skill, the more buildings our architects and engineers get to design, the more efficient their design process and overall quality will become. Opportunities like this will be a huge boon for this industry, and unlocking their creative potential could make Maine a leader in innovative green home design. With a changing climate poised to make other parts of the United States, particularly the South and the West, unbearably hot and arid over the coming decades, It's only a matter of time until Maine sees an influx in climate refugees. The pandemic has jump-started this effect, as we've all noticed, but I believe that this is just a preview of the trends that are coming. This makes it all the more important that we start increasing and modernizing our housing stock now and make sure that every Mainer who is already here has a place to live. Climate change and affordable housing are massive problems facing our state. No one bill or policy change is going to solve either one, but LD 1656 is a big step in the right direction and one that will pay dividends for the future, for the people of Maine for decades to come. I urge you to vote ought to pass on this crucial piece of legislation, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there questions for Mr. Donnelly from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Russ Long, I believe, is calling in. If you're able to unmute yourself, the floor could be yours. We'll pause a moment with our practicing patience with technology.
Good morning to all, and I thank you for the opportunity to voice my support for LD 1656. My name is Russ Long. I reside in the wonderful city of Bath, Maine, and am a proud member of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 35. I have worked in the construction and building trades for more than 40 years. I have worked in both union and non-union construction settings and have the greatest respect for all workers that put on a hard hat and earn their daily bread by the sweat of their brow. Having said that, I would like to preface my thoughts on the topic we are considering today with a quote from the German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer. Quote, "All truth passes through three stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as self-evident." We have arrived at that final stage after much noise and contention. The existential threat of global climate change is a modern-day fact of life. Of necessity, we must retool and reboot our institutions, our methods of construction, indeed, even the calculus of our expectations as to what, in fact, it is that we should be investing our resources in. The billionaire's fantasy of building a colony on Mars is an obscene and tawdry sideshow when compared to the desperation of the dispossessed and homeless citizens that are our neighbors, our friends, and even our family members. We must husband our precious resources and build greener, more energy-efficient buildings if we are to enjoy a healthy future. New technologies are here, waiting to be implemented to build greener, sustainable dwellings for our citizens. That is, of course, if we can find a workforce capable of implementing the solutions afforded by technology and invention. There is a reason why good help is hard to find. It is because the institutions that produce generations of well-trained American workers has been under assault and has been in retrograde since the Reagan presidential era. There is a direct correlation between the number of journeymen available in the construction industry and the diminishment of organized labor's imprint on the American economic landscape. Cognizant of this fact, the authors of LD 1656 have included language proposing a community workforce agreement, also known as a project labor agreement or a PLA, as a way to address the issue of workforce development. LD 1656 is an innovative, forward-looking attempt to address and begin to solve the pressing issues of homelessness, environmental degradation, and the increasing economic disparity that is due to the lack of training, and which consigns workers to low-wage jobs with no hope of procuring a secure future for themselves and their families. I request you give this bill the serious consideration it is due and pass it into law. The citizens of Maine are watching and await your decision. I thank you. Be well, be happy, and do the right thing. I will take any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony and for your offer. Are there questions for Mr. Long? Seeing none, thanks for your time this morning.
You're welcome. Thank you.
just to give folks a little overview, we have a couple more folks in favor of the testimony, a few who are testifying neither for nor against. We did have a 12 o'clock start time for our work session. That will be moved off, I'm guessing, about an hour, 45 minutes at the least. So if you're waiting for a work session, you have a little bit more time. And now I will ask Tiana Warner to give her testimony this morning.
Sorry, I have a hard time.
That's all right. We're all very patient.
Thank you. Good morning. Again, technology, and I don't get along anyways.
And it's a Monday.
Yeah, and it is definitely Monday. So Senator Hickman, Representative Sylvester, and honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Labor and Housing. My name is Tiana Warner. I am a resident of Auburn, and I am here today to testify in favor of LD 1656. I am a single mother of 2 children and have been on housing wait lists for over a year. I've been homeless 4 times in the last 10 years. And I'm currently in a rental unit right now, but I need to be out by July. I've been looking for over 4 months for a place to live. And not only is there nothing available, there's nothing I can afford that's available. $1,500 a month on a single mom income is just not even reasonable. I work 3 jobs, and I don't get to see my kids as much as I would like to. You know, some of the questions we need to ask ourselves is why a single mom has to choose between seeing her kids and having a place to live. It is even only the financial aspect. There isn't even anything available to live in. There's a critical lack of affordable housing, and there's a huge breaking point to build more sustainable. The only solution is to build more sustainable, affordable housing, and the cost of rent is out of reach for not only low-income people, but middle-income people. We also need to look at how this relates to the crisis of addiction that we have currently in our community right now. There's something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and this is the idea that without certain basic needs met, we make it harder and harder to meet any other needs, and the most basic of all our needs are food, water, and shelter. We want to combat an opioid crisis in a place where shelter is something that can barely be provided to people who can afford it. And how are we expecting people to find recovery when they can't even find a safe place to live? We're in a time where people are dying at alarming rates, and it's no wonder. None of us can even find a basic need that everyone needs. I'm a person in recovery and a single mom, and I fight this battle daily. Just a week ago, I drove around for 2 hours with a newly sober woman who didn't have anywhere to go, thought she found a safe place to go. It wasn't. She left. She's now not in recovery anymore and back out. And honestly, I can't even really blame her. I support the Sustainable Housing Act. There's something that needs to be done about the lack of places for people to live. So thank you.
Thank you so much for giving testimony. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none. Again, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Stace, and I would ask if there's anybody else waiting to give testimony in favor that they raise their hand, in which case Alyssa Thompson will pull them in. And then we will hear from neither for nor against. But before that happens, we'll turn the gavel over to Chair Sylvester.
Thank you, Representative Pepworth. I was going to just let you keep doing it. You seem to be doing a fantastic job. And thank you so much for stepping in and allowing us all to be all over the building in metaphorical sense. Welcome, Ms. Stassi. You have the floor.
Thank you, and yeah, salutation to everyone. My name is Vanessa Stas. I'm a resident of Lewiston, and I'm here to testify in favor of LD 1656. In 2013, after a divorce, I had to start over. I was making less than $20,000 a year with 2 small children. So I lived many years with roommates in order to make ends meet. They did not always meet. My saving grace was finding an affordable rent through one of these roommates. I have been living in the same apartment for 8 years now. As my financial situation improved, I was in turn able to host and rescue people that were in need of a temporary shelter until they could find something decent. But the distress of securing safe housing is increasing all around me. I work as an interpreter in my community, and I have witnessed countless such stories through the years. Here's just the 2 most recent ones. This very Saturday morning, I received a call from a friend who lives with his wife in Biddeford. They were asking me for help in finding housing. This winter, the heat in their apartment didn't go over 60 degrees when the law requires a minimum of 68. They had to turn their oven on to get extra heat. They are also infested by mice and rats, and so they complained to their landlord, who retaliated by not renewing their lease. Now they struggle to find a place to live due to a shortage of housing. I also work for Head Start, and last week, a mother with a 3-year-old child called me because her electricity had been cut off. She has not been able to pay her bill because she's an asylum seeker and has not yet received a work permit. So she has to go by on $670 from TANF to feed, clothe, and house her family. Rent alone is $700. You do the math. How can she pay bills while being unable to work? Finally, I have many friends in the construction field that often have to work under the table or on a 1099 because employers are unwilling to do their part. That penalizes workers who need to contribute to Social Security. My husband makes $17 an hour as a carpenter in Lewiston. Securing a good wage for his skills and getting a quality job in building energy efficient housing would mean stability for his future. In sum, affordable housing is a necessity for every human being. It's easy to forget once you have a good living situation, but the lack of safe housing is one of the greatest mental burden one has to carry. It's a basic need. We are all here on earth. We all deserve shelter and a place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stassi. Are there any questions from the committee for Ms. Stassi? Seeing none, thank you so much for being here today. And I believe that that is the end of testimony for people in favor of the bill. Ms. Thompson, if you could let in Matthew Marks and Tim Walton.
We already did the.
Oh, you already did that. All right, very good. Have we already also heard from neither for nor against?
No, we have not.
Well, then let's do that. If we could let in Eric Jorgensen and Greg Payne. And we will start with Greg Payne. Welcome, Mr. Payne. You have the floor.
Thank you, Representative Sylvester and Senator Hickman and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Housing and Labor and Housing. My name is Greg Payne. I'm the director of the Maine Affordable Housing Coalition. MACH obviously strongly supports efforts to expand the supply of highly efficient affordable housing for Maine people. That really is the heart of our work and our advocacy. And our 135 plus organizational members represent nearly all of the organizations and companies throughout the state that build and design and finance and develop affordable housing. We would obviously normally speak in favor of a bill that proposes a $100 investment in affordable housing, but we're testifying neither for nor against today because we just don't believe the bill articulates a feasible approach to housing development, and therefore any funds that you might appropriate would largely go unused. The specific provisions we just call out for your attention is section 1.7, which restricts the housing ownership under this bill to certain types of entities, none of which would be eligible to receive federal or state housing credits. Housing tax credits tend to pay for roughly 30 to 75% of the cost of building affordable housing. And if you can't receive tax credits, it's hard to see how you fill that hole. Additionally, when we go to municipalities and try to get approval for affordable housing projects, one of the things towns are very interested in is whether those projects will pay their fair share of real estate taxes. The entities that are required to be the ownership entities in this bill wouldn't owe real estate taxes, and so absent an amendment, I don't think that these properties would be in a position to pay the real estate taxes that those towns are probably seeking. Third, section 1.3 requires that residents of set rate apartments pay no more than 25% of their income on rent and utilities combined. That provision would make it impossible for Section 8 voucher holders, who by program design have to pay at least 30% of their income towards housing, ineligible. And lastly, section 1.1 requires that with the project labor agreement piece, the Maine Affordable Housing Coalition is agnostic on the subject of project labor agreements. I think the thing we're most concerned about is that we have a contractor who we can partner with to actually build the housing that we finance and develop and site. I reached out to several prominent affordable housing contracting entities to ask how they would handle this provision in any bids that we were looking for, and they said they simply could not bid. I think they were also pointing out the difficulty of meeting cost caps under such an environment. I do want to just point out, we strongly support the green requirements that are laid out in section 5 of this bill. Makes a lot of sense. And finally, I guess I just want to emphasize again, we don't oppose LD 1656 and the appropriation of as much money that the legislature deems appropriate, because doing so would not harm our efforts to create affordable housing in Maine. We just can't support the bill because we don't believe the money could be usable on any kind of scale, and therefore we don't see it as particularly relevant to efforts to build affordable housing in Maine. So I thank you for your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Are there any questions from the committee? Representative Drinkwater.
Boy, I just made it in time, didn't I, Mr. Chair?
Right under the whisker of the wire. Yes, indeed.
I would like you to expand upon when you said in your last paragraph that you cannot support it because you do not believe the money would be usable on any kind of scale. Are you just saying there's not enough money to meet the need?
No, I just mean as people think about the projects that they might want to build, they have some pretty steep obstacles to get past in order to achieve that. They've got to try to pay for the cost of developing the housing without the benefit of having tax credits. And so, there's a lot of things about the tax credit program that could be better, but one of the best parts about tax credit equity is you don't have to pay it back with interest. So if you end up substituting loans for that kind of equity, I don't know how you keep the rents affordable. That's just one of the struggles that I think you'd find affordable housing developers just wouldn't see this as a pot of money they could use to accomplish the objective. And the other things laid out in here, if people have to pay only 25% of their income for their housing, and you have Section 8 vouchers, people with Section 8 vouchers who want to live there, how you bridge that gap is completely unclear too. There's not a great source out there that would cover that on a monthly basis. Those are just two of the examples of why we just don't think anyone would use this pot of money if it was appropriated.
All right, thank you, sir.
Representative Cuddy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you back, although frankly, Representative Pebworth is really doing a better job. I mean, I gotta say it, I gotta throw it out there.
As about 14 different texts told me.
Mr. Payne, thank you very much for your testimony today and for bringing up the issues that you have. Could you go into a little more detail around the tax incentive part of this? That's an area that I frankly don't have a lot of knowledge around, but the way this bill conceives of the ownership is problematic, and what other methods of ownership are there that would be better if we're looking to improve on the bill, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I will say too that the housing finance in America is absurdly complicated, but it is largely driven by tax credits. Like that's the big source that you try to get first, and then you're trying to run around filling in the gaps. And the reason why the entity matters is because in order to receive a tax credit, the entity has to be taxable. And that's really the crux of the issue here, is that the bill lays out specific ownership entities eligible to receive these funds, and none of those are taxable. And so therefore they can't receive tax credits. And that's the big problem.
Thank you, Mr. Payne.
I see Representative Bradstreet, but I'm just going to follow up on this question real quickly. So who should be in that group, or should there not be a group?
Sure, you could add taxable partnerships, limited partnerships. I mean, the way they generally work is you could have a nonprofit general partner, and you have a an investor limited partner, and that's primarily the mechanism by which these tax credits can be facilitated. And if you add that, then that's one less hurdle that you have to go through, because I think the problem becomes if you don't have all that equity that generally flows through tax credits, then you're going to depend on this source to pay almost all of the cost of the housing. And if housing is generally in the range of $250,000 a unit, especially when it's built the right way with these green incentives, what you'd be looking at is spending almost $250,000 a unit out of this allocation, rather than like when you do tax credits, all these other sources come in and you end up paying, 50, 60, maybe 70,000 a unit in state subsidy or bond proceeds. This, you would have to use kind of all of it. So it'd be, 250,000 per unit out of this resource, and you'd get 4 units for your $1 million. And obviously that's not quite as helpful.
Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Payne, for being here. And I hate to keep belaboring this, but I'm talking about project labor agreements. I wonder if you or perhaps Mr. Eric Jorgensen, coming behind you, can give us any indication of where a lack of a project labor agreement has prohibited the successful completion of a development or a project.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any affordable housing project that has used a project labor agreement. And so I can't speak to one that has struggled due to not having one. I think we'd certainly be interested in a conversation about how this would work. I mean, looking at the current rates of pay, for example, that the market has commanded in affordable housing development projects, and looking at project labor agreements and seeing what's needed, that would be a good conversation to have. The issue here, and I just want to be clear, is we're just living in the world of being practitioners. And, as a practitioner, we just need to have somebody who can build the housing for us, and preferably not, having to wait for some out-of-state contractor to come in and build our affordable housing. Our concern here is simply a pragmatic one, in that our affordable housing contractor partners, kind of 201, seem to be saying they wouldn't be bidding on projects like this.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Payne? I just have one quick one, Mr. Payne. I know you do a lot of work in my area, in the Portland area, and I wonder whether you you've talked about your green goals and supporting that, and then other things. Did you support the Green New Deal in Portland as that went through? Because it's a similar.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because of the previous discussion of the Green New Deal. The Maine Affordable Housing Coalition did not support the Green New Deal for a very specific reason, and that was the apprenticeship provisions in the Green New Deal. Not any of the green or efficiency issue. That wasn't the concern. The concern that we had, once again, was that our contractor partners made it very clear they wouldn't be able to bid on our projects with the aggressive 25% of all workers have to be in an apprenticeship language that was in there. The reason that hasn't created a catastrophe for affordable housing development in Portland is because the city has determined that provision does not apply to affordable housing transactions. That's why there's not been a problem. But I just want to be clear, our opposition to the Green New Deal was specifically around that apprenticeship piece, had nothing to do with the green efficiency requirements, which we think are a good step forward.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate you being here today. And we will bring forward the Honorable Eric Jorgensen.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here today, and I'm really glad to be here, although Mr. Payne really has answered. I think he's pretty much spoken to most of the issues that I was going to talk to. So I'm going to try to sort of whip through my testimony and say that I'm speaking Representative Sylvester and esteemed members of the committee. My name is Eric Jorgensen, and I'm from the Maine State Housing Authority, and I'm speaking today neither for nor against this bill. It's not every session, I think, that one sees a bill that recommends investing such a substantial sum in new housing production. The need is, as we've heard today, absolutely acute, and there's no question that an investment of $100 million could make a very significant difference. I also think that this measure requires that any housing produced through this legislation be constructed to the level of one of several important energy efficiency standards, and we think that's a very, very important goal and applaud its inclusion here. So from the funding and the environmental perspectives, we're really right with the bill on that. We do have some serious concerns, however, on some of the same issues that Mr. Payne talked about around the affordable housing finance. And those issues we do believe could throw some obstacles into reaching the aims that this bill is trying to get at. Our chief concern is this issue of municipal ownership that Mr. Payne touched on. Public ownership means these projects aren't eligible for tax credits, and that's a real issue when you think about not having that financing source as an option. Our second concern is also something that Greg mentioned, and that calls for this issue of set rate apartments designed to be affordable for the life of the project. In order to provide that sort of housing, that means there has to be some sort of ongoing subsidy as part of the financing of the project. We don't believe that subsidy is something that can be paid for with bonds. Subsidy is an operating expense. And because the bill specifies that low-income renters will pay 25% of their income, which is lower than the Section 8 threshold, you won't be able to use Section 8 vouchers on this. And that's a really big problem. Section 8 vouchers are really the only reliable source of long-term subsidy. And I don't think any bank would finance a project with grants or general assistance listed as part of a financing strategy. We have some other concerns as well. There are smaller ones, but we feel those are the probably two most significant ones. I think the PLA requirement could be a problem in Maine, as Greg pointed out, given the existing shortage of contractors who do this sort of work to begin with. In answer to Representative Bradstreet, I have not heard of any project that has used PLA around here. I don't know. So I can't tell you about its effect on an affordable housing context. Of course, though, if this funding is simply intended to build and pay for housing upfront, like as in lump sums, rather than to have it financed with mortgages, it might be workable. But I think that approach would result in a comparatively small number of units being produced without the leverage offered by tax credits or other subsidy. So we believe if the state were to make an historic investment like this, it would be best to structure the funding to incentivize the construction of the maximum number of units. So just concluding here, you're never going to hear Maine Housing advocate against a substantial investment in affordable housing like this. And this represents something historic, and if structured properly, I think it could make a real difference in both the quantity and the environmental impact of future developments in Maine. That said, if the committee decides to move ahead with this bill, we stand by at Maine Housing to offer any technical support that the sponsors or committee might need. We're very grateful to Representative Millett for conceiving of it and the committee for your focus on affordable housing this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jorgensen. Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Jorgensen. Actually, I'm asking this from a practical perspective. If this should go forward, you've got other projects going on as well, and there is certainly a shortage of workers right now in Maine. How would you administer the $100 million? It calls for in the first fiscal year, but would projects essentially have to be delayed for a while in order to fit them into a workable schedule?
That's a good question. I mean, these projects do take a while to queue up. It takes time to site them, it takes time for all that stuff. There's this provision in the bill that has to do with some kind of a community board that will be making the grant awards. That's something that we're a little concerned about in terms of its workability. And of course, there is the ongoing issues around, both the cost of materials and the cost of, and the relatively small number of people who are, how booked up they are already doing this work. So probably, I don't know. I don't think you could do this all in a year if that's the desire.
Thank you.
Representative Drinkwater.
Welcome back, Mr. Chair. I'll tell you, you almost lost your job. You did such a fine job. Mr. Jurgensen, I want to get to yes on this bill with some modifications. My hurdle here is $100 million. Obviously, it's needed. Housing is in short supply. We've heard the demand from people of the state of Maine. How are we going to structure $100 million? We're going to sell some bonds, and then the developers will pay back Maine State Housing. Talk me through the process.
Well, according to this bill, this is a $100 million pot of money that would come out of the general fund. And that's a very, very large number for the general fund to begin with, to find new spending on. So that's going to be a question that appropriations has to figure out. The way a typical way a housing project is structured is the developers will get financing like you might for a mortgage for your house, or if you're building a house, same kind of deal. You get financing and you have tax credits that can help pay for, maybe between 30 and 70% of the project will be paid over 15 years in tax credits. And those are tools that really help extend the production of these buildings and make it work. So this money wouldn't be used for those things. I think as the bill is written, it envisions just taking this money and parceling it out to projects and using that to pay for projects right up front. And that may be something you could do. I would just say that if you finance the project over time, like a typical affordable housing program, what you would do is leverage this. You could do a lot more for your money. You could extend it a lot further. I like to think of the affordable housing pipeline as sort of like a jet engine. You got to throw a lot of fuel into it. And if you keep the fuel going into it on one end, it'll come out. And you got to just keep that fuel going if you want to keep the thing in the air. And so I think from my perspective, $100 million, if we could use it more for subsidy, we could use it to fill those gaps that Mr. Payne was talking about, that would really go a long way toward keeping the engine in the air for a lot longer. If you just use it to spend money, if you just chunk it out and spend it on buildings and pay for the buildings in total, you'd get some housing out of it, but it would be not as much. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense, because obviously we want to stretch that 100 million as much as we can for as long as we can, because what I've learned since serving on this committee for my first time is that there's plenty of vouchers out there. It's a lack of housing for these people. So therefore, I'm in favor of something that could, stretch out the 100 million, get paid back, and put it and throw it back out there in the water again. So thank you, Mr. Jurgensen.
You're welcome.
Representative Gear.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks for that helpful explanation, Mr. Jorgensen. I'd like to just carry that forward. And again, correct me if I'm misunderstanding something, but the current model of developing affordable housing really depends on private developers because of the tax credit system. So you're really focusing on incentivizing private developers to build affordable housing as opposed to another McMansion down the road, right? Would that be a correct, accurate statement? Okay. So if we wanted to think about, so the other thing I've heard is that you can partner then with a nonprofit, perhaps in order to, whatever it could be, acquiring land, for example. So if you had a land trust or a housing trust that was acquiring, tax foreclosed properties from the town and using that land to build on, so you would have no cost to the land, right? Which would keep the project affordable. Is there any other way? Is there something that I'm missing that as a way that we can incentivize developers to approach these kinds of projects and take on these kinds of projects?
I mean, I think there's a lot of there's a lot of flexibility within the financing world, but I mean, most of it is predicated upon having a period of a period that goes out over time. And you build in the cost of the rent you're going to receive. You build in the cost of subsidy that comes from vouchers. Maybe you build in other types of financing mechanisms for a long period of time. And I think there actually are pretty good incentives for that. Within you can make them. You don't make a ton of money on every building or any building because the cash flow is by design relatively small. but it's, I think that there's a fair amount of flexibility in how you do it. So I don't really think the issue is incentives as much as, you know, there's just, we're dealing with market issues right now that are huge. I think there are ways around if you can find, say, if town owns land, for example, and they want to, if towns want to provide land for a project like this, you could still provide the land, save the money there, but you could still structure it around a tax credit financing thing. You could change the ownership of the land in some way to make that workable. I mean, I guess the biggest issue I see, and I think it's the same thing that Mr. Payne said, was the minute you start building these things on tax exempt property, you can't take advantage of the tax credits. And that becomes just a real difficult thing to make work. One of the things I've subjected you in the past to my my voucher primer that I sent a couple of weeks ago. I've got another one of these things that I put together on how a typical low-income housing tax credit project might be financed, and it sort of gives an example. And I'll send that off to you before the work session. I can make sure that's in good shape and get it out to you. But that's how I used it to try to understand how this works for myself, and working with our development department here, figured that out. So
that would be super helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Jorgensen? Mr. Jorgensen, I have a quick one, and I'll just apologize for my dog lolling in the background. Normally her snores are so loud I have to wake her up, but she's just being sort of adorable at the moment, so we'll let her go. So clearly, the groups that are named in the bill, if they were if they were the whole owners, they wouldn't be able to, but they would be able to be, for example, partial owners in a project. I believe that it sounds to me like the goal is to have these groups have a say in the projects, and maybe not the total say. If that was the case, would then tax credits come back on the table if they were only partial owners?
I don't know. I mean, my sense is that, say, public housing authorities are nonprofits and they own properties. And I'm getting out of I'm really getting out of my depth here, but I think there's different ways to structure these things. It's a very complicated world, and I think there's a lot of different options you can have. So I wouldn't say no. I won't say yes.
All right. I'll take your, and we'll try to find out for the work session. I would be interested, in the line of questioning that Representative Drinkwater was taking. I would be interested in how Maine State Housing Authority would spend $100 million for the work session, taking the goals of this bill in mind. How would you have gone about doing it if it was a department bill?
Yep.
Representative Geer? Oh, no. Okay, perfect. Are there any other questions? Seeing none. Melissa, is that the end of testimony?
Yes, it is.
All right. Then I will close the public hearing on LD 16.
Sylvester?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Representative Drinkwater does have his hand up.
Very good, Representative Drinkwater. You are muted, sir.
There we go. Just a general question going forward, Mr. Chair. Are we going to be allowed to use props from now on? Because, you know, your dog laying back there is really quite an advocate.
Well, you know, I have to admit, she's feeding me the questions from behind. I'm not sure if that's, but you'll notice I get much smarter the moment she walks into the room. All right. If there are no more quips and or quandaries and or questions, we will close the public hearing on LD 1656. We have work sessions that were scheduled for noon, but clearly the committee needs a break. What I would love to do, and there is Chair Hickman. Did you have a thought on this, sir?
I think we should break until 1:15.
Very good. And if folks would like to caucus, would you like them to come back at 1 to do so? Or
Sure.
All right, then why don't we break till 1? Alyssa, if you could put together the breakout groups over in the other section, we'll be back at 1.
Yep. I can't put people into the rooms until they join.
Correct.
Yep. Just a heads up, but I will open the meeting.
So I'm asking folks who want to caucus to be back at 1. If you don't need to caucus, you can be back at 1:15. If you want to go out into the day, then we'll see you next week maybe, but we would prefer if you would be back at 1. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. And I want to just take this moment to thank Representative Pebworth, Madam Interim Chair, who my texts were blowing up, telling me with what grace and elegance and intelligence you were leading this committee, and how I lacked all of those things. And so I appreciate that. And we will see you all in the work session. Anything from you, Mr. Chair?
Oh, I just thank you for being who you are, Representative Pebworth. It's a busy day for the chairs, and so we needed you there. Thank you so much.
And I see Representative Warren had a comment.
I think that Representative Drinkwater may have had something to say. I don't want to put you on the spot, Representative, but if you still had something.
Representative Drinkwater, did you have more?
Yeah, I always have more, sir. More is always less. I'm assuming we're going to have to leave this format, and then she's going to send us the new link.
Yes, you probably have one in there, but Ms. Thompson, if you could send everybody the new link, that would be fantastic.
Yes, I will. If you've already registered, you don't have to re-register. Just find the one from Zoom, or you can re-register. Up to you.
All right, we appreciate everyone getting a new one in just in case.